Chapter 556. The one who had caused the most trouble was not Wang Yan and his son, who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and led an army into the city. It was Wang Chong, who had constructed Lion City. At the very start, the Izan people had also ridiculed the Mengshi Zhao people. But after witnessing the formidable defensive capabilities of Lion City, and experiencing its position on the Arai Plains, and in the southwest of the Tang dynasty, no one dared to ridicule the Mengshi Zhao people any longer. The Izan people did not have much understanding of the people of the Central Plains. At most, they knew that the Tang people were commanded by Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan. But in terms of fame, neither Xinyu Zhongtong nor Wang Yan could compare to Wang Chong. Now even the lowest-ranking soldiers of Izan knew of the name Wang Chong. This name was accompanied by all sorts of unfathomable and mysterious conjectures. Many people in the Great Tang Empire were saying that this mysterious youth in the distant capital had long ago predicted that Mengshi Zhao and Izan would start this war. Although Lion City was said to be built for merchants, its defenses and preparations were on the level of a war. Even the Izan people had accepted this theory. Even Fenjie and Jiasidu had been rather curious about this youth called Wang Chong. Although the two of them did not believe that he had such foresight, the existence of Lion City had truly caused immeasurable damage to the Mengshi, Yusang army's tactics, and the course of the war. There was no doubt about this, and the name of Wang Chong had become an existence that the Mengshi, Yusang army could not ignore. But no one had expected him to descend from the heavens and appear here from the capital. Moreover, he had also defeated Jiao Sero and Fenjie, and even Huashu Wuzong, the lofty Izan great general, had fallen for Wang Chong's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain and suffered a minor defeat. Impossible. The first to react and find this result unacceptable was not Jiao Sero or King Mengshi Zhao, but Fenjie. How could that kid be so powerful? His eyes were open, and his emotions were fluctuating wildly. Constructing a city and commanding soldiers were two completely different concepts. Even when he had first heard that a brat of the Tang dynasty had constructed that vexing Lion City, Fenjie had only felt that this fellow posed a threat to Mengshi Zhao. However, this was completely different from Wang Chong leading an army to defeat him. "Prime Minister, are you sure it's him?" Jiao Sero suddenly raised his head, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Although he already completely trusted Daluan Ruozan, Jiao Sero still felt that the Prime Minister was being a little too certain. "That's right, Prime Minister. That Wang Jiuling is known as the brilliant minister of the Tang dynasty. When he was around, the Tang dynasty was in a state of splendor. Even the son of heaven of the Tang dynasty was supported by him. He has 3 sons and 1 daughter. His eldest son is an important civil official of the Tang dynasty, and his 3rd son, Wang Yan, is an expert in the art of war. His defenses are probably even tighter than Xinyu Zhongtong's. If you add on Wang Fu and Wang Chong, wouldn't the Wang clan be filled with elites?" Jelifeng's hands were pressed against the armrests of her chair, her eyes rippling, as if she still found this news somewhat difficult to digest. Although the former prime minister of the Tang dynasty, Wang Jiuling, had retired for more than 10 years, he still had a great influence in the Tang dynasty. He contributed greatly to the prosperity of the early Tang dynasty. Although he was now old, he still posed a great threat. As long as this person didn't die, there was no peace of mind. Although Wang Jiuling was now old, there were many talented descendants under his name. All of them were elites, and he had the posture of a prime minister. Just thinking about it gave Jelifeng a headache. The 6th Zhao of Arai Lake was too small. Although he had always been ambitious and had some achievements. Although he had always been ambitious and wanted to achieve something, Mengshi Zhao was located on a plateau, and the air was thin. It was not suitable for anyone other than Izan. If Mengshi Zhao wanted to expand, and if Jelifeng wanted to realize her ambitions, break away from her position as a vassal, and become a true emperor, they could only expand north, toward the direction of the Tang dynasty. The southwest of the Central Plains was connected to Mengshi Zhao, and the soil was fertile. This was the perfect place to expand their territory. This was also the reason why Jelifeng wanted to ally with Izan. However, Jelufeng had no choice but to admit that the difficulty of achieving his ambitions was far greater than he had imagined. Ha ha ha, Your Majesty, it's actually not difficult to determine the identity of that young man. Xin Yuzhongtong only listens to Zhangqiu Jinxiong's orders. If anyone were to receive Zhangqiu Jinxiong's orders, he would immediately hand over his military authority. However, will Wang Yan hand over his military authority as well? I've heard that Wang Yan is inflexible and inflexible, and he doesn't know how to be flexible. Even Zhangqiu Jinxiong wouldn't be able to get him to hand over his military authority in the midst of a battlefield that is constantly changing and intense. Dalawan Ruozhen surveyed the crowd. The crowd fell silent. Only Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan had contemplative looks on their faces. The people of Uzan didn't know much about the Tang dynasty, especially the affairs of the royal court in the Central Plains. However, Jelifeng was different. He knew the internal affairs of the Tang dynasty like the back of his hand, so he knew that what Dalawan Ruozhen said was true. Also, have you ever wondered why the first thing that child did when he first appeared wasn't to do anything else? There were so many people on the mountaintop. Instead, he headed straight for Wang Fu's mountain? If he didn't have a close relationship with Wang Yan, he wouldn't be so concerned about the matter, right? So if you connect all these things together, then think about that Qilin son of the Wang clan. Tell me, besides him, who else could satisfy so many demands at once? With these final words, Dalawan Ruozhen silently smiled at the people in the tent. Unlike Hueshu Wuzong, Dalawan Ruozhen had always been concerned with matters of strategy. The death of 50,000 soldiers was a major event for Hueshu Wuzong, especially for the Mengshi, Yusang army, but it was nothing to Dalawan Ruozhen. If one wanted to gain, one had to make sacrifices. In truth, when one considered the illustrious reputation of the Tang dynasty at its peak, the death of 50,000 soldiers was completely within Dalawan Ruozhen's expectations. On the contrary, it was Jelifeng's ability to defeat Xin Yuzhongtong at the start, and his subsequent smooth sailing, that made Dalawan Ruozhen feel that something was amiss and out of his expectations. On the contrary, this result was the normal performance of the Tang dynasty. Prime Minister is correct. In order to fulfill all these conditions, it has to be a descendant of the Wang clan, and the most likely candidate is that youngest son of Wang Yan, Wang Chong. Although I've never interacted with him before, since he was able to construct Lion City to obstruct us and ruin our plans, he is the most likely candidate. Jelifeng sternly said, Ha ha ha, this war has only just begun to get interesting. I said before that the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains couldn't possibly only have this little ability after centuries of accumulation. Even 100 feet can die but not stiffen, much less the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains. Only now can I feel at ease about this war. Dalawan Ruozhen waved his fan, his entire person exuding a carefree and tranquil aura. He did not seem at all like he had just lost a battle. Jelifeng imperceptibly creased her brow, but she said nothing. Although Jelifeng tolerated it, one Emperor's Duan Gechuan was not so easy to deal with. Prime Minister, don't forget, the Tang dynasty is our enemy. Although he admired Dalawan Ruozhen's ability to see through the minutest details and even predict the enemy's moves, Dalawan Ruozhen's attitude of not being able to differentiate between friend and foe was really displeasing. He had just suffered a great defeat and lost 50,000 elite cavalrymen. Only Dalawan Ruozhen could laugh about this. Haha, General, don't misunderstand me. Since our Uzan has sent out our troops, we are naturally prepared to work together with Mengshi Zhao to deal with the Tang dynasty. I'm just a little interested in that child. Although the Wang clan is a clan of ministers and generals, Wang Jiuling was born a civil official. He was able to move unhindered in the past because he relied on a group of loyal subordinates and extremely powerful warriors. In terms of the art of war, while he is top-notch, he has yet to reach the level that we imagine him to be. Otherwise, Wang Yan wouldn't still not have been made a duke or marquis. Dalawan Ruozhen slowly walked forward, waving the feather fan in his hand, and a playful look on his face. I'm just a little curious. If the Wang clan's art of war isn't enough to teach the level that you speak of, then where did that child learn his art of war? Let alone us, not even Wang Jiuling, Wang Zhongxi, or Zhang Shogui of the northeast have ever learned the tactics used by that child? Or did he, a teenager, learn them? I know all the books of the Central Plains like the back of my hand, but I've never seen this sort of art of war. Daluan Ruozen's eyes shone brighter and brighter. Almost instinctively, he sensed that this Qilin son of the Wang clan was completely different from anyone he had ever met. Daluan Ruozen sensed immense potential in him. Huashi Wuzong, Your Majesty, generals, ministers, when the war starts, I don't care how you deal with the Annam Protectorate, but you must capture that child alive. Are you joking? How can we hold back on the battlefield? Moreover, that child poses too great of a threat to us. If he stays here for another 15 minutes, many more of us will die. This sort of person should naturally be killed first. Why should we leave him alive? The veins on Huashi Wuzong's forehead were bulging. Although Daluan Ruozen was the prime minister of the great Ngari royal lineage and had a higher status than Huashi Wuzong, Huashi Wuzong had never truly treated him as his superior. And even if he was his superior, there was no need for him to listen to his every word. This had always been his personality. Ha ha ha, just listen to me. I suspect that that kid has a never-before-seen military strategy book on him. If we can capture him and interrogate him, it will be of great benefit to our Uzin. Moreover, in the end, the benefits will still be yours. When we meet on the battlefield, death and injury are unavoidable. Moreover, casualties are only a matter of a moment, but obtaining the military strategy book on that child is a matter that will last for generations to come. For our Uzin, the benefits we will obtain will be far greater than 50,000 soldiers. This is an opportunity that has been delivered to our doorstep. No matter what, we can't let it go. That is, if we don't want to face the likes of Wang Jiuling, Wang Zhongxi, Zhang Shogui, Gao Xianji and Geshu Han. At the end, Daluan Ruozen's gaze was profound. A great general saw victory in a war, but a prime minister saw the fate of the empire for the next few decades, perhaps even centuries, or millennia. This was the difference between Daluan Ruozen and Huashi Wuzong. Buzz. The moment Daluan Ruozen spoke, Jelifeng and Duan Gichuan were both shocked. They glanced at each other, but neither of them said anything. It was said that the prime minister of the Uzin Ngari royal lineage, Daluan Ruozen, possessed a monstrous understanding of the Mengshi Yusang army. While everyone was still discussing yesterday's defeat and the effect that mysterious youth of the Tang dynasty had on the Mengshi Yusang army, Daluan Ruozen had already determined the identity of his opponent, and he had even smelled an enormous opportunity from this defeat. Uzin is already powerful enough. One Daluan Ruozen, one Huashi Wuzong, and there are still the other 3 generals and 4 generals. If we obtain some formidable military strategy book, our Mengshi Zhao will have just sent away the tiger only to welcome the wolf. In the end, we'll still be vassals. As for that Wang Chong, we either have to kill him as quickly as possible, or we have to think of a way to get it for ourselves. No matter what, we can't let Uzin get it. Jelifeng sat motionlessly on the bench, his face expressionless, but countless thoughts were running through his mind. Mengshi Zhao and Uzin were both allies and enemies. Besides working together, they had to be on guard. Chapter 557. Jelifeng, Duan Gichuan, and Finjie quickly left. In the tent, Daluan Ruozen and Huashi Wuzong were also preparing to leave. The 100,000 or so soldiers of the Annam Protectorate and Allied Army had already left Lion City. Cutting them off meant cutting off the final obstacle to the southwest. Without Xinyu Zhongtong holding them back, the entire southwest would belong to Uzin and Mengshi Zhao. This war between the 3 empires would usher in a conclusion. Moreover, both sides had already made up their minds that the youth of the Tang dynasty could not be allowed to leave this place. Prime Minister, why did you tell Jelifeng just now? Once Jelifeng and Mengshi Zhao's generals had left, Huashi Wuzong suddenly turned his head to Daluan Ruozen. Don't tell me that you don't know what Jelifeng will think if he learns of this matter. Ha ha ha. Fools have their own ways of using fools, and smart people have their own ways of using smart people. Haven't you noticed? Ever since he unexpectedly defeated Xinyu Zhongtong at Arai, Jelifeng no longer has much regard for our Uzin. Daluan Ruozen's smile faded, his eyes suddenly turning profound. This, Huashu Wuzong was dumbfounded. He truly had never thought about this problem. He was a general, a soldier, and what he considered was strategy and tactics, as well as victory and defeat in a battle. The things that Daluan Ruozen had spoken of had already delved into the human heart, and he truly had not thought about them. With Jellyfing at this step, there's no way out. Does he still dare to betray us? Who knows? Didn't the emperor of the Tang dynasty, whose name was Zhao Zhao, also not expect Jellyfing to rebel? Daluan Ruozen said as he waved his fan. With a light step, an invisible barrier burst out from his feet and quickly enveloped the surroundings. The human heart is the hardest to fathom. Jellyfing is full of ambition, and the southwest probably won't be enough to satisfy him. Even if he is unwilling to submit to Tang, he will not be willing to submit to our Uzun in the future. Since that's the case, it's only good for us to let him understand the threat of the Tang dynasty. Don't forget, we still need his Mengshi Zhao and 300,000 soldiers to help us deal with the Tang dynasty. But what about that kid? Huashu Wuzong frowned. Although from last night, I don't think that he's as formidable as you make him out to be. But if he really does have some secret military strategy manual of the Central Plains, given Jellyfing's personality, he'll either take it away by force or kill that kid. Either way, it won't be good for us. You're the smart one. When I said that he has a military strategy manual, I was just saying it. Whether he really has one or not is another matter. And we'll find out very soon. As for Jellyfing and his son, since they're allies, it won't make a difference whether the military strategy manual ends up in their hands or ours. If it ends up in Jellyfing's hands, we can ask him for it. As long as Jellyfing's wise enough, he won't refuse. And if he doesn't have a military strategy manual, what difference does it make whether that child dies or not? Daluan Ruozen lightly chuckled as he waved his feather fan. Huashu Wuzong helplessly shook his head at Daluan Ruozen. He and Daluan Ruozen had worked together for several decades, and his ability to command was on the same level as Zhangqiu Jinxiong. But Huashu Wuzong was still not very used to Daluan Ruozen's way of thinking and style. Let's go. No matter what, the Anan Protectorate Army and that child called Wang Chong must die today. It's time for this war to end. Huashu Wuzong extended his hands. Clank-lang. 2 cold rays of light flew out from the edge of the tent. Huashu Wuzong grabbed the 2 Uzun scimitars and strode out. Boom! The moment Huashu Huaitsong walked out of the tent, the inside and outside of the tent seemed to be 2 different worlds in a fierce gale. The entire camp was brimming with killing intent, and the army was on the verge of moving out. Begin! Hurry! All soldiers move out. Bring the supplies. Cavalry, get ready. Check the weapons, armor, and rations. As far as the eye could see, the Arai plains were densely packed with soldiers. The 300,000 soldiers of Mengshi Zhao and Yusang had added a somber air to the battlefield. Have you found any traces of the Tang soldiers? Huashu Huaitsong looked forward and waved his hand, not even turning his head. My lord, although the Tang soldiers have used some tricks, we've already found their tracks. They're on a mountain in the southwest. Behind Huashu Huaitsong came the sound of hooves, as an elite scout mounted his horse and respectfully said, Very good. Pass on my order. The army will immediately move out. Yes, my lord. The elite scout turned around and galloped away. The hoofbeats of the warhorses were getting farther and farther away. Raising his head to glance at the dark clouds in the sky, Huashu Wuzong's eyes turned much colder and harsher. Regardless of politics, the duty of a soldier was to fight, to destroy their opponents. Everything else had nothing to do with him. Zhangqiu Jinxiong, you've lost. A harsh light flashed through his eyes as Huashu Wuzong mounted his horse and galloped north. At this moment, the dark clouds of war had reached an unimaginable level. Without the protection of Lion City, the Tang dynasty and the Mengshi, Yusang army would face a decisive battle in the southwest. Rumble! The earth quaked. War had come far sooner than anyone had imagined. But when the final mountain garrison by the Annam Protectorate appeared before the eyes of the Mengshi, Yusang army, everyone was stunned. What appeared before their eyes was not a barren mountain, but a completely different scene. At the top of the mountain, thick smoke billowed. Waves of green smoke rose into the sky, and along the towering clouds, and around the towering mountain, from top to bottom, one could vaguely make out the image of a fortified fortress of steel. Countless Annam Protectorate soldiers were stationed on the summit, exuding a somber aura. What's going on here? Let alone anyone else. Even someone like Huishu Wuzong revealed a look of shock. This was completely different from what they had expected. What is that? It doesn't look like a fortress. Fenjie was also shocked. What did that brat do? Jiao Sero's eyes widened in shock. Everyone looked like they had just swallowed a fly. They had originally believed that in the wilderness, the Annam Protectorate would have no protection and would be no match for the Mengshi, Yusang army. But the scene before them was completely different. Like a miracle, these Tang soldiers had managed to erect a fortified fortress in such a short time. And it seemed to be an extremely formidable one. At the very least, it was an extremely frightening sight from a distance. Just how did that brat do it? Lion City has already fallen, and the borders of the Tang dynasty can't even take care of themselves. There's nothing in this barren mountain range. So how did he manage to create all these things? It seems like if we want to deal with the Annam Protectorate, we have to kill that brat first. Longkimba spat, his face full of hatred. This style was far too familiar, almost identical to Arise Lion City. It could only have come from the Wang clan's Qilin son. To the Mengshi, Yusang army, this was not a good omen. This isn't good news at all. It seems like the Tang people made ample preparations before we came. The clattering of hooves could be heard from the vast army. Mengshi Zhao's King Jelifeng rode a black Arai steed. Her brow furrowed as she parted the crowd and slowly rode up from the rear. This should be another of that youth's handiwork, right? The Uzun army had pursued the Annam Protectorate through the snow, and Jelifeng had not seen a single one of the 2 battles that had been lost, so she could only speculate. Jelifeng had originally been somewhat skeptical of the Uzun army's words. But at this moment, as he stared at this desolate mountain peak, all of Jeluofeng's doubts vanished without a trace. Even though the battle had not yet begun, at this moment, even Jelifeng could sense the thorny nature of the mountain range. That youth from the Wang clan was even more difficult to deal with than she had imagined. Ha ha, isn't this very normal? Since we know what this child has done, this shouldn't be surprising, right? Daluan Ruozan waved his feather fan as he rode over from the side on a majestic highland steed. Unlike the others, Daluan Ruozan's reaction to all of this was much calmer. Since he had already seen the damage that youth from the Tang dynasty had done to the Uzun army yesterday, Daluan Ruozan was not very surprised. To be honest, I'm getting more and more curious. Where did this child learn these things? A teenager shouldn't have this kind of ability, right? Moreover, no one in the Tang dynasty should be able to come up with such strange tactics. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains has a history of over 1,000 years, and there are many extraordinary people hidden within. I'm more and more convinced that this youth has a formidable book on the art of war or strategy on him. Jelifeng and Duan Ge both paled at these words, but neither of them said anything. However, no matter how many schemes he has or how many strategies he has, he can't change the fact that the Annam Protectorate will become history. Those things on the mountain, if my guess is right, they should be some simple fortifications. The construction of a city isn't that simple. Even that Lion City took more than a year. There's no reason for him to be able to uproot a city in such a short amount of time. Daluan Ruozan's eyes were bright, and he appeared wise and farsighted. Prime Minister is correct. No matter how many tricks the Tang people have up their sleeves, today, they will be completely wiped out. From today onwards, the Southwest will no longer have an Annam Protectorate. Jelifeng slowly regained her composure. With a wave of her arm, roars filled the air, and the vast Mengshi, Yusang army surged forward like a black flood of steel. Nay! The winds howled and the warhorses neighed. When thousands of cavalry neighed in the wind, the atmosphere was grim and somber. In an instant, the atmosphere of war had become several times more intense. Advance! Advance! No, we can't let a single Tang people escape. Anyone who dares to retreat will be killed without question. Line up and listen to orders. Anyone who dares to move without permission will be executed. The army awaits orders. Today is the day when our Mengshi Zhao army thoroughly defeats the Tang people. Level by level, orders were passed down from the upper echelons to the lower echelons. With the sounds of beatings and curses, all the leaders and officers began to get to work. Chapter 558. It's finally begun. As the massive Mengshi, Yusang army rumbled out from the horizon, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. The vast army was like a surging sea, surging toward the lonely mountain in the center. Anyone who was not present would find it impossible to imagine the shock. Wang Chong had imagined countless times the War of the Southwest that would usher in the empire's destruction, but none of the battles he had imagined could compare to the shock of seeing it with his own eyes. Standing at the very top of the mountain, looking down at his surroundings, he could feel the stifling pressure coming from all sides. Although they had already defeated more than 50,000 Uzun cavalry, to the Mengshi, Yusang army, which still had nearly 500,000 soldiers, this was only a small wave, far from being able to deal them any serious damage. Warning: Major event decisive battle of the Southwest has officially begun. The Annam Protectorate currently has 64,824 survivors. Once the Annam Protectorate's survivors drop below 40,000, user will be obliterated and will be considered to have failed the trial. However, for every 10,000 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers killed by user will be rewarded with 50 points of destiny energy and 500 points of upper limit. When user kills 100,000 enemies in the decisive battle, user will be rewarded with a temporary reward of 1 level of upper limit. This reward is only effective during the decisive battle. Upon completion of the mission, it will be cancelled. Just as Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, a familiar voice that only Wang Chong could hear suddenly rang out in his mind. Wang Chong froze at this voice, a look of surprise on his face. I can increase the upper limit? This news had truly taken Wang Chong by surprise. The Southwest War had already reached its final showdown, and Wang Chong only had 60,000 some Annam Protectorate soldiers under his command. The rest were all reinforcements led by Wang Chong's father and Wang Chong himself. The 60,000 Annam Protectorate could easily be reduced to 40,000 in a battle of this scale. However, it would be different if there was a limit to the reward. Although every 10,000 people could only increase the limit by 500, it was undoubtedly the best news that Wang Chong had heard in this desperate situation. Although 500 is a small number, it adds up. If he killed 20,000, he would be able to reach 1,000. If he killed 50,000, he would be able to reach 5,000. If you can reach 100,000, you will be able to obtain an additional reward of 5,000. Wang Chong's heart was in turmoil. Although 5,000 was a drop in the bucket in this kind of big battle, it was a huge improvement for Wang Chong's situation. Moreover, the Stone of Destiny mentioning the upper limit of the Halo level reward in the final battle was also an unexpected gain. Although it's only a temporary boost, it's enough. Wang Chong had thought about it a long time ago. The Stone of Destiny wouldn't blindly oppress its host and create an inevitable death. That wouldn't be beneficial to it at all. Moreover, this didn't match the Stone of Destiny's behavior. After all, it wasn't an intelligent life form. Now, everything had confirmed his initial guess. So that's how it is. Wang Chong took a deep breath and quickly regained his senses. No matter what kind of opportunity the Stone of Destiny had provided, it was only an opportunity. Whether it was the upper limit of the quota or the Halo level reward, he had to fight for it himself. In this battle, the most important thing was not the Stone of Destiny, but himself. Attention everyone. Prepare to meet the enemy. Swordsmiths, speed up the welding. Inscribers, do it at the same time. Mr. Zhang, supervise the other smiths. Follow the blueprint and quickly assemble the wall modules. That Wang Chong stood on the mountain peak like a statue. With a wave of his arm, he issued a series of orders. Rumble. Thick smoke roiled over the mountain peak. Following Wang Chong's orders, the fires rising from the furnaces grew several times hotter. Thick smoke blotted out the sun, wave after wave of heat rising, as if many monsters of the fire element were breathing into the heavens. And following Wang Chong's orders, the nearly 100,000 Tang soldiers, the smiths under Zhang Shouji's command, and the swordsmiths, inscribers, and smiths dispatched by Su Yiqin, began to move like a massive and precise machine. The entire mountain peak was in full swing. Roar! Ha! Following a series of chants, from the top of the mountain to the bottom, huge black steel modules were erected one after another under the cooperation of countless soldiers and craftsmen. Each of these steel modules was as tall as a man, and they were riddled with holes, bolts, screws, iron bars. Nothing like this had ever appeared in the history of the Tang dynasty. Not even someone as experienced and knowledgeable as a master architect of the court like Zhang Shouji had ever seen something like this. Numerous child-sized horizontal bolts and nuts were inserted into the holes of the two huge and heavy steel modules. The horizontal bolts and nuts were covered with inscriptions of toughness. Then, scorching hot molten iron was quickly poured onto them. 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks. Each of the heavy steel modules had many places where they could be clamped together, and the modules were quickly joined together to form the massive and sturdy wall. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing was incessant, and sparks kept bursting out. From top to bottom of this grotesquely rocky mountain, massive steel walls rose up from the ground like a miracle. Right under the eyes of the Mengshi, Yusang army, a massive monster fortress was rapidly taking shape. Whoosh! Standing on the summit, Wang Chong unfurled a white paper that was more than 1 zhang long and 4 feet wide. On this paper was a towering mountain, covered with countless intricate designs that only Wang Chong could understand. This was the paper that Wang Chong had given to Su Yiqin several months ago. If one looked carefully, one would realize that the mountain Wang Chong had drawn for Su Yiqin was exactly the same as the mountain they were currently standing on. And when one considered that this had been drawn by Wang Chong long ago, before the Southwestern War had even begun, it was even more astonishing. There was no doubt that Wang Chong had predicted this war before things had developed to this point, and he had even chosen this highest mountain in the southwest as the site of the final battle. "Chonger, how is it?" A voice came from the side. On the summit, Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong were standing behind Wang Chong, grave expressions on their faces. The war was imminent, and Mengshi Zhao and Uzan had mobilized their entire armies. Daluan Ruozan, Huashu Wuzong, Jelifeng, Duan Gichuan. These enemies of the southwest, who had once been locked in a stalemate with Zhangzhou Jinxiong for half his life, had led an army of 500,000 and was charging toward them. The lives of nearly 100,000 Tang soldiers, including the craftsmen on the mountain, the lives of everyone, and the nearly 1 million civilians of the southwest. All of them were tied to this war. The imperial court could no longer send any soldiers, and the Annam Protectorate had no path of retreat. This was a battle with their backs against the wall. In the face of these world-shaking opponents, both Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong were under heavy pressure. But neither of them were the sort of people who would show their joy on their faces and easily speak their minds. Right now, the Southwest and the lives of the 100,000 soldiers can only depend on this child. Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong looked at Wang Chong at the same time, their eyes brimming with anticipation. Strictly speaking, the war in the Southwest was already a failure. At the very least, in the early stages, the two of them had completely failed. The true turning point had only appeared after Wang Chong had appeared. If there was one person in the Southwest who could resolve this crisis, this desperate situation, then it could only be Wang Chong. Ever since last night's successful breakout, the two of them had actually handed over all the authority to command the army to Wang Chong. Even Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong had completely followed Wang Chong's lead. Not a single superfluous word had been exchanged. Of course, the two of them had not made this decision without thinking. In yesterday's battle, Wang Chong had used his own method to prove himself. And even though they couldn't understand the blueprints in Wang Chong's hands, but there was one thing that the two of them could see. It was clear that Wang Chong had brought his army here because he had made ample preparations. These furnaces and the other steel castings were proof, and there was no need to mention the oiled paper covering the army provisions buried in the caves on the summit. As for these steel walls, they were the best cover for the army, It's about there, 80% complete. Based on the distance, not even Huoshu Wuzong's elite cavalry will make it in time. Yesterday, when I led them around in circles, I had already calculated the time. Moreover, after last night's loss, Uzin's army can no longer split up with Meng Shijiao's army. Even if we give them a chance, they won't dare to come. Wang Chong said, his face brimming with confidence. In front of Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong, facing Huoshu Wuzong, two of the empire's elite generals, only Wang Chong could say such words with such confidence. Confidence came from strength. Yesterday, if Wang Chong had dared to say such words, he would definitely have been laughed at. But now, even Wang Yan, who had always treated Wang Chong harshly, inwardly acknowledged the strength of Wang Chong's words. Speed up. Don't get careless. Last time, Huoshu Wuzong didn't even know of your existence, but this time he's prepared, so it's completely different. In addition, Uzin still has Dalawan Ruozin, and this person's intelligence is as deep as the sea. On the surface, it looks like Jelifeng has sent emissaries to persuade Uzin, but in reality, Dalawan Ruozin is the true mastermind behind the scenes. Wang Yin clasped his hands together. Ah! Wang Chong turned his head to glance at his father, a hint of surprise in his eyes. He naturally knew that Dalawan Ruozin was the true mastermind behind the scenes. To be more precise, the two of them were in cahoots. Jelifeng was ambitious and the mastermind on the surface, while Dalawan Ruozin was the mastermind behind the scenes. But for his father to be able to see this was rather surprising. But perhaps I've underestimated father in the past. Although his personality is a little inflexible, he definitely doesn't lack intelligence. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to reach his current level. Wang Chong quickly regained his composure. Although he was shocked, Wang Chong quickly realized that it was probably because he had understood his father too little in the past. Only now, fighting side by side with his father, was Wang Chong slowly beginning to understand a little. Father, be at ease. I won't let you down. Wang Chong turned his head and smiled, the light quickly returning to his eyes. To be able to fight side by side with his father had always been Wang Chong's deepest desire. Alas, he had never had the chance to realize it in the past. But now, it had finally become a reality. Huh! The fierce winds ruffled his black hair. Standing next to his tall and muscular father, Wang Chong felt incomparably gratified. At this moment he felt no fear, no panic, no apprehension, only endless calm, like a deep pool. Dalawan Ruozin, Huoshu Wuzong. Come, let me see just what tricks you have. Chapter 559. Pa! With a flash of light, a spear covered in dark gold veins, and containing a destructive power, lightly tapped the stone steel. Pa! The stone steel collapsed and cracked open like a spider web. Then it shattered into pieces. Humph! The steel of Emperor Wu of Han. It's one thing if you didn't know about it before. But now that you know, how could you still keep it? A general riding a horse with explosive power slowly walked over from behind. His eyes were extremely sharp. In the future, the Tang people will no longer be able to set foot on Arai. The southwest will be our world. The general's eyes were filled with hatred as he glanced at the debris on the side of the road. Only Meng Shijiao's generals could hate the steel of Emperor Wu of Han so much. Haha, General, well done. The Han treated the Meng Shijiao people as slaves, so they naturally deserved to be smashed. But our Uzin is different. Uzin and Meng Shijiao are allies, so we naturally should work together to deal with the Tang people. Dalawan Ruozin waved his fan as he slowly walked over from behind. There was a hint of a smile on his lips, making him look elegant and free. Humph, that better be the case. The general snorted and stood to the side. Prime Minister, please don't blame us. Generals are all crude people, and they always speak like this. King Jelifeng of Meng Shijiao walked over from behind with Crown Prince Jelifeng, Great General Duan Gichuan, and a group of Meng Shijiao generals. Ha ha ha, not at all. I don't blame you, I don't blame you. Dalawan Ruozin laughed and waved his hand, but a strange look flashed through his eyes. The people of Uzin are the same. The two looked at each other and smiled, then turned their gazes to the opposite mountain peak. 500 feet above the foot of the mountain, huge steel city walls were scattered all over the place, towering like stars in the sky. Each of these steel walls was incomparably heavy and extremely thick. Thousands of these steel walls, section by section, layer by layer, were arranged in intervals from the foot of the mountain to the top. Behind these steel walls, tens of thousands of fully armed Tang Dynasty infantry hid behind them, fully on guard. Those eyes were staring down the mountain at the Mengshi, Yusang army like hungry wolves. Although the Annam Protectorate suffered heavy losses in the Battle of Arai, with less than 70,000 soldiers remaining, the remaining soldiers were all elites. Their combat power did not decrease but increased. Purely in terms of fighting power, the current Tang army was not one bit inferior to the Mengshi, Yusang army. On the contrary, it was superior. Even Uzun could not compare to a single soldier in terms of quality. This is bad. Dalawan Ruozen's eyebrows twitched. Even if he was not good at the art of war, he could tell at a glance that the Tang people were building tricky fortifications in this way. This was definitely not good news for the Uzun, who were experts in cavalry charges. Wang Yan, Xinyu Zhongtong, come up and answer me. Dalawan Ruozen suddenly raised his head to the summit across from him. Kakakakaka. The response to Dalawan Ruozen was the clattering of gears. Countless ballistae emerged from behind the steel walls, their arrowheads gleaming with cold light, as they aimed at Dalawan Ruozen from all sides. Protect Uzun Prime Minister! Loud shouts and bangs could be heard as several dozen Mengshi Zhao soldiers raised their shields and charged out of the army. The massive shields piled up in front of Dalawan Ruozen, shielding Dalawan Ruozen behind them. Right now, Mengshi Zhao and Uzun were grasshoppers on the same rope. Jelifeng had long ago ordered that no matter what, they had to protect these two important figures of Mengshi Zhao. Enough! Dalawan Ruozen waved his hand. Just as he was about to speak, a voice came from the summit. Dalawan Ruozen, there's no need to go through so much trouble. If you have something to say, just say it. We can hear you from here. Xinyu Zhongtong's sonorous and forceful voice came from the summit, so loud and clear that it could be heard even from far away. On the summit, the soldiers parted to reveal two imposing figures. They were Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong. The wind was blowing fiercely. The two supreme commanders of the Great Hall were fully armed and stood at the top of the mountain. Their majestic figures were like gods, causing people to feel fear at the sight of them. Ha 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 ha, Brother Wang, Brother Xinyu, we meet again. The two of you are truly generous. You've actually built another city so quickly. If I'm not wrong, this should be the work of that little brother Wang Chong who defeated us yesterday, right? As the saying goes, no discord, no concord. Before the battle, can you let me see the little brother who defeated two of my generals in a row? As he said the last sentence, a sharp glint flashed in Dalawan Ruozen's eyes. Behind Dalawan Ruozen, Jiao Sero, Si, Jelifeng, Duan Gichuan, and the others all looked up. The army of 500,000 suddenly became much quieter. Although they had long ago confirmed Wang Chong's identity, even Zheluo Feng and Jia Siluo, who had already exchanged blows with Wang Chong, hadn't been able to clearly see him. Somehow, the two's attitude towards Wang Chong had completely changed. These guys! On top of the mountain, after hearing Dalawan Ruozen's words, Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong's minds buzzed. It was not difficult for Uzun's and Mengshi Zhao's people to know of Wang Chong's existence. After all, they had already met him yesterday. However, it was really surprising that they knew his identity and name. Even Wang Chong, who was behind Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong, felt warmth in their hearts. I didn't expect to be exposed so quickly. Wang Chong took a deep breath and looked at the figure at the foot of the mountain. He was not very tall, and his heart was filled with fear. I knew this guy would not be easy to deal with, but I didn't expect him to be even more difficult than I thought. In any era, Dalawan Ruozen was an extremely difficult character to deal with. Wang Chong had never met Dalawan Ruozen before. This fellow has never even met me, but he was able to identify my identity and background with a single glance. He's truly frightening. If possible, I must think of a way to kill him. Otherwise, he will definitely become a major foe of my Tang dynasty. Father, Lord Xinyu Zhongtong, Dalawan Ruozen has come to probe me. It's fine. He won't be able to find out anything about me. Let's see just what he wants to say. Wang Chong suddenly said. Putting aside their opposing identities and standpoints, Wang Chong was actually quite curious about this Uzun prime minister, who had single-handedly led the Southwestern War. For a general to be able to fight against such an enemy, even if he died in battle, it would be an honor. Wang Yan and Xin Yuzhongtong had no idea what Wang Chong was thinking. As they gazed down the mountain at the Mengshi, Yuseng generals, their bodies tensed as if they were facing a powerful foe. Prime Minister, if you have something to say, just say it. My son is still young, and does not deserve such praise from great minister. On the summit, Wang Yan suddenly spoke, his voice like a great bell. At the base of the mountain, the eyes of the Mengshi, Yuseng army flashed. Wang Yan's words had undoubtedly confirmed Daluan Ruozen's identity. Ha 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 ha. Brother Wang, a straightforward person doesn't resort to insinuations. The Tang dynasty can no longer send reinforcements. With your meager forces, you are no match for us. This being the case, why don't you join us? Perhaps you might even be able to survive. Chapter 560. Hearing Daluan Ruozen's words, Wang Chong's father Wang Yan only frowned and did not say anything. However, Wang Chong, who was behind him, could not help but feel a buzz in his heart. This Daluan Ruozen is so cunning. Now that things had come to this, there was no room for reconciliation between the Tang dynasty, Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. There was no way Daluan Ruozen did not understand this. As soon as he said this, it was no longer important whether his father and Xin Yuzhongtong agreed or not. His goal was to disrupt the hearing and sound, and affect the morale of the army. Wang Chong's gaze swept across. As expected, the morale of the army, which was originally united, immediately changed slightly. Although it was not to the extent of weakness or actual surrender, there was no doubt that the morale of the army was not as strong as before. The human heart is subtle. No matter what the situation is, as long as there is a glimmer of hope, they will not give up, even if they know that this glimmer of hope does not exist. However, this is the subconscious and instinctive reaction of humans. Wang Chong sighed inwardly. A wise man would use words to move the heart, but a wise man would achieve his goal regardless of whether you would be moved or not. This was also the first time Wang Chong met this prime minister of the Uzun-Gari royal lineage. But it was this first meeting that Wang Chong immediately discovered that Daluan Ruozen was far more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. A heavy sword without a sharp edge. A person like Daluan Ruozen has a purpose in his every move. With a simple sentence, he is able to strike the morale of the army without revealing his identity. If this person does not die, he will definitely be a disaster for the Tang dynasty in the future. Wang Chong pondered inwardly. His father's personality was not suitable to argue with Daluan Ruozen. Wang Chong turned his gaze and quickly looked at Xin Yuzhongtong. My lord. Wang Chong suddenly took 2 steps forward and whispered in his ear. Ha ha ha, since ancient times, the defeated general surrenders to the victorious general. I've never heard of the victorious general surrendering to the defeated general. Uzun had always been known for his invincible cavalry. However, Uzun wasn't a match for us even when they had the upper hand. Instead, they had lost 50,000 soldiers. How could such an army be worth our surrender? Daluan Ruozen, don't you think you're overestimating yourself? Yesterday it was 50,000. Have you thought about how many more you want to die today? Xin Yuzhongtong laughed out loud, his voice resounding through the heavens and earth. Bastard. Before Daluan Ruozen could respond to Xin Yuzhongtong's words, Jiao Sero, Fenjie, and Longkimba couldn't help but turn purple, their expressions extremely nasty. Xin Yuzhongtong's words were clearly referring to their defeat last night. Don't worry about him. He's just trying to provoke you. Look around you. Daluan Ruozen sternly said. Everyone's hearts froze as they subconsciously looked around. The morale of the surrounding army instantly began to fluctuate. Ming. This. The soldiers were stunned and instantly speechless. It was obvious that this was a psychological attack. Daluan Ruozen sneered and quickly raised his head to the summit. Xin Yuzhongtong, you're still the mighty protector general of the Annan Protectorate. When did you get the chance to speak for someone else and become their mouthpiece? Call that brat Wang Chong behind you to come out. On the summit, Wang Chong and Xinyu Zhongtong both felt their hearts tremble. Daluan Ruozen's gaze was extremely sharp, allowing him to see through the problem at a glance. Daluan Ruozen, I suggest you stop trying to talk your way out of this. Do you really think you can win something on the battlefield with your mouth? If you have any skill, let's see it on the battlefield. This time, there was no need for Wang Chong to say anything. Xinyu Zhongtong sneered and rebuked him. At this point, Daluan Ruozen's eyes turned, and he began to walk back. Since that's the case, as you wish. How is it? A few steps away, Huashu Wuzong and Mengshi Zhao's King Jelifeng swiftly approached. This brat is more troublesome and cautious than I imagined. For someone like Xinyu Zhongtong to listen to him is truly beyond my expectations. In such a short amount of time, it seems like that child has already gained complete control of the army. Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong are even willing to assist him in secondary positions. This isn't good news at all. Daluan Ruozen said with a frown. His original intention was to meet Wang Chong and test him. However, he didn't expect that Wang Chong wouldn't come out at all. Even Daluan Ruozen couldn't do anything about it. Although he already knew Wang Chong's identity, he couldn't see him face to face, so he couldn't gauge Wang Chong's strength. You have to be careful. This child doesn't look easy to deal with. Isn't Prime Minister overestimating him? Jelifeng frowned. She admitted that Wang Chong might be different from other children. After all, a normal child wouldn't have been able to beat up Uzin's cavalry last night. However, no matter how powerful a child was, he was still a child. Even if he had some kind of inheritance or some kind of military strategy, he was still a child. Jelifeng always felt that Daluan Ruozen thought that the child was more powerful than he really was. I hope I'm overestimating him. But we'll find out in a little while. With these words, Daluan Ruozen left with a flick of his sleeve. I don't believe that you'll be able to hide forever. Daluan Ruozen quickly vanished into the crowd. There was nothing left for him to do. Now it was time for the Mengshi, Yusang generals like Huashu Wuzong and Duan Gichuan to appear. Just now, why didn't you appear? At almost the same time, on the summit, Xinyu Zhongtong turned his head in confusion to look at Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozen had stated that he wanted to meet Wang Chong, but Wang Chong had refused to meet him. Although he didn't think that it was necessary to meet Daluan Ruozen, Xinyu Zhongtong still felt that Wang Chong was intentionally avoiding him, even though Xinyu Zhongtong didn't see this as necessary. No. In a place where the Mengshi, Yusang army could not see, Wang Chong shook his head, a cautious expression on his face. Daluan Ruozen is an extremely formidable person, though it can't be seen on the surface. But his every move has a deeper meaning. The entire army, including Father and even you, Lord Protector General, is something that Daluan Ruozen knows like the back of his hand. Thus, he can target you based on your personalities. The art of war says it well. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. In the entire army, the only person that Daluan Ruozen doesn't understand is me. The less Daluan Ruozen knows about me, the more cautious he will be, and the less likely he will be to act rashly. This way, the only one you will have to deal with is Huashu Wuzong. But if he also knows me like the back of his hand, everything will be completely different. Don't forget that the Uzungari royal lineage has always been one civil and one military, one minister and one general. They have always supported each other, just like the twin walls of the empire of our Tang dynasty. When encountering this sort of person, it's never too much to be careful. Wang Chong had a cautious expression. His father Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong might not be able to see it, but Wang Chong was well aware that in this war, Daluan Ruozen posed a far greater threat than Huashu Wuzong or Duan Gichuan. Any action that underestimated this Uzun prime minister would only invite humiliation. Father Lord Xinyu, the Uzun and Mengshi Zhao are about to attack. I'll leave the rest to you, Wang Chong said. Hearing Wang Chong speak of serious matters, both Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong had grave expressions in their eyes. Although Daluan Ruozen's persuasion to surrender was a psychological attack, it was also a true reflection of their current situation. The lives of 100,000 soldiers were tied to this decisive battle, and the lives of 1 million civilians were also entrusted to it. I'll go down first. Xinyu Zhongtong flung his cloak and left the summit. As a commander-in-chief, he might not be qualified in terms of strategy and tactics, but as a general, he was more than enough. Moreover, the steel modular wall that Wang Chong had set up was like a city leaning against a mountain. It was precisely the defensive terrain that Xinyu Zhongtong was most proficient in. In terms of understanding of the Annam Protectorate, no one was more proficient than Xinyu Zhongtong. On the day of the Battle of Arai, if Xinyu Zhongtong had not led his army away from the city he was defending, away from the terrain he was most familiar with, and where he could display his might, he might not have lost so badly against Zheluofeng on the shores of the Arai. Xinyu Zhongtong's departure this time clearly showed his attitude. He had truly left the affairs of the empire southwest to Wang Chong. Once Xinyu Zhongtong left, only Wang Yan and his son were left on the summit. Chong'er, although I did not wish for you to appear here, our Wang clan has always been a clan of ministers and generals. Whether a general or a minister, we must be loyal to the empire, loyal to the Tang dynasty. Since you have talent in the art of war, don't waste it. Your father believes in you. Wang Yan turned around and looked at Wang Chong said. There was a complicated look in his eyes, but more than that there was hope. With the war in the southwest developing to this stage, Wang Chong had become everyone's hope. At the very least, he and Xinyu Zhongtong had essentially lost. Yes, father. Wang Chong clenched his fists, his heart deeply moved. Not too long ago, he had also wanted to fight side by side with his father. But he had never been able to fulfill this dream. Although his father had always encouraged him to join the army, his father's harsh personality forbade him from carelessly stepping onto the front lines or his own battlefield. For someone of his father's personality to say such words and affirm his own performance was already quite good. Wang Yan quickly left. Just like Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Yan also went to command the army. Other than the 60,000 some from the Annam Protectorate, the rest were soldiers under Wang Yan's command and reinforcements from the imperial court. Although Wang Yan did not understand the Annam Protectorate, in terms of commanding these soldiers, not even Xinyu Zhongtong could compare to him. Two of the world's best defenders were willing to lower their stance to assist Wang Chong. In the entire world, no one but Wang Chong could enjoy such treatment. Boom! War drums and horns began to beat. The earth quaked as the vast Mengshi Yusang army began to move like some prehistoric beast. The earth quaked as the vast Mengshi Yusang army began to move like some prehistoric beast. A powerful killing intent burst out of the void and quickly engulfed the entire battlefield. Zhang Shouji, get ready. The final step. At the same time on the summit, Wang Chong waved his right hand and issued a final order. Walala! Fall! On the mountaintop, hundreds of blacksmiths and sword forgers opened the huge iron chests one after another. As they lifted them, countless iron caltrops of different sizes rolled out of the chests and fell down along the mountaintop that was more than 20 zhang wide. These caltrops were covered in sharp spikes, the longer ones several feet long while the shorter ones were 5 or 6 inches long. Iron caltrops of all sizes poured down from the top of the mountain like a black carpet, filling up the last flaw of the mountain's defense system. Chapter 561. Nay. The winds howled and the warhorses neighed. By the time Xinyu Zhongtong and Daluan Ruozen's conversation had concluded, the air around the mountain was surging and somber, the atmosphere extremely tense. The neighing of the warhorses, the beating of the drums, and the blaring of the horns all made the atmosphere tense to the extreme. A Mengshi Zhao soldier was fully armored. Although his face was shrouded in armor, the clenching of his fingers on his spear betrayed his true emotions. The other soldiers around him were the same. Not far away, the fierce, courageous, and murderous Uzun soldiers were not faring much better. Their incessant blinking of their eyes revealed the unease in the hearts of these soldiers. The powerful Tang dynasty had left an indelible mark on the Uzun. When they were still children, they had heard that the foreign soldiers of the Tang dynasty had once killed their way to the plateau, even getting close to the Great Snow Mountain Temple. But that was a matter from a very, very long time ago, and the emperor of that time had not even been the same. The Uzun soldiers had already forgotten this memory. Just yesterday, they had even been jeering at the Tang people. But the deaths of 50,000 soldiers had caused these eagles of the plateau to once more recall this pain. Although no one believed that the Annam Protectorate could defeat the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army, there was no question that these people were worthy of respect. Move out. Daluan Ruozhen, Huashu Wuzong, Mengshi Zhao and Jelifeng, the four commanders of the Mengshi Yusang army, rode in a line. Looking up to the summit, they swiftly gave the order to attack. Kail! Kail! The earth quaked as tens of thousands of fully armored soldiers surged toward the last stronghold of the Tang dynasty. Surprisingly, however, the first wave to attack was not the experienced Uzun cavalry, but the soldiers of Mengshi Zhao. Ready! Shields! Following a series of ear-piercing commands, huge steel shields that were as dense as clouds were suddenly raised high into the sky like fish scales, covering the sky. At the same time, the rings of light vibrated. Amidst the rumbling sounds of heavy steel, one after another, war halos shot out from the densely packed large shields. Tenacious halo, defensive halo, black iron halo, tempering halo, charging halo, attack halo. One after another, tens of thousands of halos vibrated and rumbled, connecting into one. In an instant, a huge battle intent erupted from the soldiers of Mengshi Zhao. Above these shield-wielding soldiers, the void distorted, and a huge rock appeared, emitting a milky white light. Gradually it appeared. As soon as this huge rock appeared, the entire atmosphere of Mengshi Zhao's army instantly changed. It became much heavier and steadier. White Stone Legion. On the top of the mountain the wind howled. Wang Chong looked down from above, and saw the illusion of a huge white rock slowly appearing above the soldiers of Mengshi Zhao's front line. Wang Chong's expression instantly turned solemn. Jelifeng is very ambitious. He has indeed trained quite a number of troops over the years. The quality of these troops may not be comparable to the Annam Protectorate, but they are very similar in all aspects. White Stone Legion, one of the elite legions trained under Jelifeng. Although Wang Chong had never seen it before, it was a well-known name back then. This army contributed a lot in the Battle of Arai. The White Stone Legion was one of the armies with the largest number of soldiers in Mengshi Zhao. There were no less than 100,000 of them. Rumble. The sky and earth shook. Tens of thousands of Mengshi Zhao's White Stone Legion marched in an orderly manner. They divided themselves into phalanxes and moved slowly, but firmly towards the Annam Protectorate from all directions. Seeing this scene, both Wang Chong and the other generals on the top of the mountain could not help but feel their eyelids twitch. Mengshi Zhao's White Stone Legion is almost the same as the Tang dynasty in terms of marching, the use of shields, and the way of marching. Back then, the Holy Emperor was benevolent and supported Mengshi Zhao with many things, including the training methods of the army and the way of battle formations. But now, these are being used by Jelifeng to deal with the Tang dynasty. This guy is really scheming and putting in a lot of effort. Wang Chong's sleeves fluttered in the wind. Thoughts flashed through his mind. With such a similar style of army, coupled with Jelifeng's understanding of the Tang dynasty, and the fact that they were fighting in a foreign land, it was not surprising that the Annam Protectorate suffered a crushing defeat. Unfortunately, Jelifeng, your opponent is me. Looking down the mountain, Wang Chong's gaze slowly turned cold and hard. The art of war was the combination of truth and falsehood. If Jelifeng really thought that he could defeat the Tang dynasty a second time, just because he had defeated them once, then he was really wrong. Get ready. Wang Chong raised his right hand and quickly gave the first order. Following this order, the air rumbled, and like magic, one dazzling halo after another rumbled, shooting out wave after wave from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. The 100,000 Tang soldiers stood on different halos from the summit to the base of the mountain. With the help of the steel walls, the original mountain was gone, replaced by a mountain of steel formed from men and steel. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Killing intent and baleful aura gushed out, exuding a dangerous aura. At this moment, the Tang army was dignified and silent. Everyone exuded the aura of a well-trained, battle-hardened, iron-blooded and merciless. Anyone who saw this army would be able to sense the frightening strength and aura exuding from them. The tens of thousands of soldiers were solemn and motionless, not a single person making a sound. They were as orderly as a single person. The strength and aura of tens of thousands of people gathered together was not something an ordinary army could achieve. At this moment, the Tang army on the 100,000 mountains once more began to show signs of that invincible Tang dynasty army that had once swept through the world. More than 100,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers had died in the Battle of Arai. But not only had the Annam Protectorate not crumbled, it had even gotten stronger. These scoundrels! At the base of the mountain, the Mengshi, Yusang commanders also widened their eyes at this sight. Even though they stood on different sides, they had to admit that the Tang dynasty's systematic training methods had produced soldiers of such high quality that not even the Yuzhan could compare. If not for the fact that cavalry were inherently superior to infantry, and that the Yuzhan possessed the most cavalry, the Southwestern War would have ended in a completely different way. Fight! 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 A series of deafening roars rang out as orders were issued. Tens of thousands of Whitestone soldiers used their shields as cover and advanced in an orderly fashion. On the summit, the clattering of bows and crossbows could be heard. Unlike the Mengshi Zhao soldiers who were rapidly approaching, the Tang soldiers on the mountain remained motionless, as if they were statues. Their cold and bright gazes were focused on the base of the mountain. This combination of movement and stillness placed an even greater pressure on the soldiers. 50 zhang, 40 zhang, 30 zhang, 20 zhang. The atmosphere was tense to the extreme. Whether on the summit or the base of the mountain, all the Tang Mengshi or Yusang commanders were focused on the front line. Finally, bang! With this massive explosion, the Whitestone soldiers at the very front finally clashed with the Tang army and began to engage in a chaotic melee. Kail! 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 Heaven-shaking roars shook the world, rumbling like harvested wheat. The moment the two armies clashed, the soldiers of Mengshi Zhao's Whitestone army and the Tang army began to fall like wooden stakes. Chapter 562. Chapter 562. Introduction. Press forward. Without waiting for the battle to fully unfold, Jelifeng waved his hand, and another wave of Whitestone Legion pressed forward with tens of thousands of soldiers. Shields collided with shields, and the sound of steel colliding with steel rang out. Both sides were densely packed together. Press forward. Right when the second wave of people went up, Jelifeng's third wave of people surged forward and covered the sky and earth. Don't give them a chance to breathe. Duan Wuji, you go up and personally hold the line. Yes, Your Majesty. At Jelifeng's side was a heroic general with a white tasseled spear. He clamped the sides of his horse and immediately leapt forward. It was the commander-in-chief of White Horse Legion, Duan Wuji. Duan Wuji was the younger brother of Mengshi Zhao's General Duan Gechuan. He was also the commander-in-chief and valiant general of White Horse Legion. The entire White Horse Legion was trained by him. Sending out Duan Wuji at the beginning of the battle showed how much importance Jelifeng placed on this battle. Bang 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 bang. The air shook, and the rings of light rumbled. Layers of rings stacked on top of each other, pushing forward continuously. In a short period of time, the Tang dynasty's shield soldiers at the foot of the mountain were under extreme pressure. Every inch of land was covered with at least several times the number of Whitestone Legion soldiers charging forward. Huge thorn-shaped rings of light intertwined with each other, rumbling and shaking continuously. Battle cries rang out incessantly. Jelifeng didn't use any tricks. He just relied on his advantage in numbers to continuously press against the Annam Protectorate on the mountain. A single Whitestone Legion soldier wasn't a match for the Annam Protectorate at all, be it in terms of strength, speed, or agility. However, when the numbers reached a certain level, the quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change, and everything would be different. Let's see what they do. At the foot of the mountain, Jelifeng, Huashu Wuzong, and Daluan Ruozan all looked at the top of the mountain silently. Everyone was silently waiting for the Annam Protectorate's response. The steel walls at the top of the mountain looked like a fortress. It looked like a city, but it was not a city. Even Jellyfing and Huashu Wuzong had never seen such a situation before. The two of them couldn't figure out Wang Chang's pulse at all. The first wave was a test. What do you think they will do? Jellyfing suddenly said. How to do it? You'll know soon enough. Huashu Wuzong narrowed his eyes. In Zhangqiu Jinxiong's era, these two ambitious and ruthless figures of the Southwest had always kept each other in check. But after Zhangqiu Jinxiong's era, these two ambitious and ruthless figures of the Southwest actually stood together to deal with the Tang dynasty. The White Stone Legion is a legion that I trained. Its defense is extremely strong. No matter what tricks they have up their sleeves, they will be greatly discounted in front of the White Stone Legion. As long as we can break through their defenses and destroy the Annam Protectorate, the entire southwest of the Tang dynasty will be our world. This will be our final battle. Jellyfing said, gazing at the top of the mountain. The final battle. After eliminating these enemies before them, the entire southwest of the Tang dynasty would be the world of Uzun and Mingxi Zhao. At this time, even Jellyfing couldn't conceal the excitement in his heart. Everything he had hoped for would become a reality tomorrow. Don't be too careless. A voice came from the side. It was Huashu Wuzong's voice. What? With our army of 500,000? Do you think we can't destroy the last of their troops? Jellyfing frowned and said. Huashu Wuzong was Uzun's general. He was incomparably brave. Jellyfing originally thought that Huashu Wuzong would agree with his point of view. However, he didn't expect that Huashu Wuzong's attitude was completely different from what he had imagined. I didn't say that we can't destroy them. I only said that we need to be cautious. I have a feeling that this matter won't go as smoothly as we think. Huashu Wuzong said calmly. For some reason, Huashu Wuzong had a bad feeling in his heart. Perhaps it was because the Tang people at the top of the mountain were too quiet. Perhaps it was because in Huashu Wuzong's heart, the Annam Protectorate had fled all the way, but chose to stop here only because there was a mountain here. In short, maintain sufficient vigilance. Don't be careless. Bang bang bang. On the mountain slope, the shields kept colliding with each other, and the sound of explosions was endless. Kill! Kill! Tens of thousands of White Stone Legion soldiers roared as they pressed forward. Squeaking sounds could be heard without end. Hold! Hold! On the mountain slope, the Annam Protectorate was constantly being squeezed down. One by one, the soldiers held onto their shields and kept retreating. Bang bang! Stones exploded beneath their feet. The enormous pressure causing the feet of these frontline shield-bearers to sink deeply into the earth and rocks. It seemed that the collapse of the front line was only a matter of time. Cackalack! The sound of shields rubbing against each other caused the faces of the Tang dynasty soldiers to turn red. At the base of the mountain, Jellyfing, Duan Gichuan, Fenjie, Daluan Ruozan, and Huashu Wuzong were all looking up at the summit. As long as the Tang dynasty soldiers on the front line could no longer hold out, everyone would rush in and attack the summit in one fell swoop. It's about time. Wang Chong looked down from his vantage point at the entangled Tang dynasty, Mingxi Zhao, and Uzun soldiers, and his gaze slowly turned sharp. Jellyfing and Huashu Wuzong were using the White Stone Legion to test him, but wasn't Wang Chong also testing him? Bang! With a heavy wave of his right hand, the Mengshi, Yusang army suddenly found itself caught off guard. Just when the Annam Protectorate and the Mengshi, Yusang army were in a stalemate, on the verge of collapse. Rumble! The outermost Annam Protectorate in the first circle suddenly collapsed. Tens of thousands of soldiers fleeing in all directions. Buzz! The White Stone Legion soldiers in the innermost circle were all dumbfounded. What's going on here? At the base of the mountain, Jellyfing's expression flickered. Although he had also hoped that the Annam Protectorate would fail, he had not expected such a crushing defeat. This was happening much earlier than he had anticipated. But before he had time to think, the White Stone Legion surged forward. Wait! Jellyfing wanted to say something, but it was too late. The tens of thousands of White Stone Legion soldiers surged forward, throwing their formation into complete chaos. Kill! Kill them. Kill these Tang people, and the Southwest will be our world. The sight of the Annam Protectorate being routed on the front lines had everyone going crazy. With the Tang people in the front and the White Stone Legion in the back, it was like a chase. But no one noticed that other than the soldiers on the front lines being routed, all the Tang dynasty soldiers on the summit remained motionless. Begin! He waved his right hand, and before the Whitestone Corps soldiers could react, countless Tang soldiers had charged in from the left and right flanks. Boom! 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 The first wave to arrive was not the Tang dynasty infantry, but the sound of tens of thousands of ballistae. These ballistae were all hidden behind the steel walls. From the foot of the mountain, no one could see them at all. Before the White Stone Legion could react, cold light flashed in the air, and the ballista bolts, flickering with the cold light of death, swarmed toward them. There wasn't even time to dodge, and the soldiers of the Whitestone Corps were cut down one after another like wheat being cut down. The surging stellar energy and the thorny halos could not stop the ballista bolts at all. Ah! Screams rang out incessantly as tens of thousands of Whitestone Legion soldiers fell in droves. Each ballista bolt pierced through at least 10 to 20 soldiers. Under normal circumstances, these ballistae would not have been able to cause so much damage if they were wielding large shields. But when a group of people swarmed forward, they were so densely packed that it was impossible for them to fall. And the dense crowd allowed the ballista bolts to display their full power. Retreat! Retreat! Run! Ballista bolts! This is an ambush! Everyone retreat! Chapter 563. Shields! 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 That the leaders of the White Stone Legion screamed at the top of their lungs. But it was too late. Boom! Just as one of the White Stone Legion leaders screamed, the air whistled, and a huge axe appeared. It spun violently and slashed into the head of the White Stone Legion soldier. Kill! A series of earth-shattering battle cries came from all directions. The frontline shield-bearers of the Annam Protectorate had already been defeated. But suddenly, countless axemen charged in from both sides. The huge axes glinted coldly in the air. Anyone who saw them could not help but feel their eyelids twitch. Boom! 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 The flying axes flew out like raindrops and slashed into the formation of the White Stone Legion. Bang! 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 Countless soldiers of the Whitestone Corps groaned as they toppled to the ground in pools of blood. Hold on! Hold on! Hold on! The generals of the Whitestone Legion shouted frantically. There were not many Annam Protectorate soldiers charging in from both sides. At least, their numbers were far less than the White Lion Legion. If they could withstand the frenzied assault of the Annam Protectorate, the situation could be changed. It's too late. On the mountain peak, Wang Chong looked down from above. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his lips curled into a cold smile. The armies of this era were still stuck in the pursuit of numbers. They did not know what the true art of war was. No matter what army, no matter how strong they were, if they only knew how to charge and kill, they were just a motley crew. Against well-trained opponents who advanced and retreated as one, there was no way they could resist. Boom! 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 The short victory on the battlefield quickly turned into a one-sided harvest. Thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers charged down from the mountain peak. The Whitestone Legion soldiers could not withstand them at all. This test was reversed in a short period of time. Retreat! Retreat! At the foot of the mountain, the face of the commander of the Whitestone Legion, Duan Wuxia, darkened. He had built the Whitestone Legion himself, but he had never expected it to end up like this. Pass down my order. Reserve troops, prepare to press forward. Duan Wuxia roared in exasperation. But before Duan Wuxia could deploy his reserve troops, when the Tang army reached the edge of the mountain, the pursuit came to a sudden halt. Tens of thousands of soldiers seemed to have been frozen. All the soldiers stopped as if there was an invisible line there. Everyone was uniform as if they were one person. The spearmen and axemen were the first to retreat. Behind the army, the previously defeated shield-bearers once again emerged. Clang, 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 clang. Huge metal shields, each taller than a man, once again stood erect like a wall at the foot of the mountain. The shield-bearers were at the front, and the spearmen were at the back. It was as if the battle had never happened. Other than the corpses that littered the ground, there was no other evidence that this battle had ever taken place. Silence. Absolute silence. Jellyfang's and Daluan Ruozen's gazes turned nasty as they watched the orderly Anam Protectorate on the slope. On the side, Huashi Wuzong narrowed his eyes, his expression turning grim. In last night's battle, he had been lured away by Wang Chong, and he had sensed Wang Chong's crafty schemes throughout the entire process. Wang Chong's cavalry had never once directly clashed with him. By the time he arrived at the battlefield, the Anam Protectorate had already safely withdrawn. This was Huashi Wuzong's first time seeing Wang Chong's command in a frontal battle. In this battle, neither side had mobilized their entire army. The Mengshi, Yusang army had only mobilized a portion of the White Stone Legion, which could not be considered their true strength. But on the summit, the Tang army had only mobilized a portion of the army at the foot of the mountain. From the middle of the mountain up, the rest of the Tang army had not moved. From start to finish, even in the most intense moments of the battle, they had not taken part. There was no question that this probing battle had resulted in a massive defeat for the Mengshi, Yusang side. Bastard! Jellyfang stared at the Tang army on the mountain, his entire body trembling in anger. The White Stone Legion was one of the elite forces he had trained, and he had placed high hopes on Duan Wuji. He had never expected them to be so easily defeated, and in front of Daluan Ruozen and Huashi Wuzong. Just what is this bastard doing? Zhao Yuofeng was infuriated. In yesterday's battle, Uzun had lost 2 battles and lost more than 50,000 soldiers. While Jellyfang appeared fine on the surface and pretended not to care, deep inside, he was still somewhat disapproving. How was Duan Wuji's current performance any different from Uzun's? In front of Daluan Ruozen and Huashi Wuzong, he had lost all face? Your Majesty, there's no need to be angry. This was only a probing battle. It doesn't mean anything. Daluan Ruozen shook his head and continued. Huashi Wuzong, this is your domain. What say you? He turned to Huashi Wuzong. This brat isn't simple. Huashi Wuzong was quiet for some time before speaking, his expression grave. The current Anam Protectorate in his hands is completely different from before. This battle will be rather troublesome. Ah! Upon hearing this, Daluan Ruozen's eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. The relaxed smile on his face instantly disappeared. Daluan Ruozen and Huashi Wuzong had known each other for a long time, but he rarely saw such an expression on his face. He had never heard him say the word troublesome. Huashi Wuzong had a ferocious and combative personality. When he encountered a powerful opponent, he would only think of ways to defeat it. He would never think of any trouble. No trouble. Is this brat really that powerful? Daluan Ruozen's eyebrows slowly furrowed. He didn't know much about military matters, but if Huashi Wuzong was so cautious, then the nature of the matter was completely different. At the same time, the mood on the summit was completely different from the mood at the base of the mountain. Just as the battle was over, a familiar voice descended from the heavens like a sweet rain. Before the casualties of this battle had even been counted, Wang Chong already knew how many Mengshi Zhao had lost. In just a few moments, Mengshi Zhao had lost more than 8,000 soldiers. Wonderful! Chen Shusun looked down at the silent Mengshi, Yusang army with an excited expression. It was no wonder that Chen Shusun found it difficult to maintain his composure. In this battle, Mengshi Zhao and Uzun had come with a torrential momentum. Their army of 500,000 covered the mountains and plains, exerting an enormous pressure. Although no one said anything, everyone, including Chen Shusun, felt the pressure weighing down on them. The Anam Protectorate had failed far too many times in the southwest. This battle was extremely important. If they failed in the first round, not only would the Mengshi, Yusang army advance, the morale of the Tang dynasty would also crumble. They were already at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers. If they failed in the first round, the morale of the army would be dealt a fatal blow. But as long as they could win, their mentality would be completely different. The 2 commanders of the army, Xin Yuzhongtong and Wang Yan, had remained unmoved. Half of the army had not participated in the battle, and this in itself was a manifestation of their strength. Wang Chong only faintly smiled, saying nothing. This was just the first test. It wasn't much at all. Alas, just a little bit more. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind as he looked down the mountain. Chapter 564. Pass on my order. Tell them not to get careless. This is only a test. The battle is still far from beginning. Wang Chong said. The first battle was extremely important, directly affecting the morale of the army. They had always been lacking in numbers, and if morale was lacking, the battle would truly be lost before it had even begun. But 8,000 some soldiers were nothing, compared to the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. This was truly a drop in the bucket. To the menacing Mengshi, Yusang army, it wasn't even enough to float a bubble. In addition, don't get careless. Uzun and Mengshi Zhao have imperial great generals on the level of Huashu Wuzong and Duan Gichuan commanding them, and they have yet to move out. Yes, young master, your subordinate understands. I will pass on young master's order. Chun Shusun bowed, a serious expression on his face. The 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army, and the two great generals that had yet to move out, Huashu Wuzong and Duan Gichuan, meant that the situation of this battle was truly grim, far from being optimistic. It's about time. Pass on my order. Prepare to carry out the second plan. It's about time for Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozhen to move out. Wang Chong looked down at the slightly disorderly Mengshi, Yusang army and suddenly said, in the fierce winds, the mood on the battlefield was far more intense than anyone had imagined. Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozhen had moved far faster than anyone had imagined. Everything was as Wang Chong had predicted. 8,000 some casualties truly were not a serious blow to the Mengshi, Yusang army of 500,000. Get ready. Jelifeng's expression was extremely cold. Tell Duan Wuji to have all the soldiers of the White Stone Legion throw in the battle. The entire Annam Protectorate doesn't even have 100,000 soldiers left. I don't believe that my 100,000 White Stone Legion can't open a gap in the Annam Protectorate. Yes, your subordinate will go. Wait. Tell Duan Wuji that this time, I want him to lead the army and be the commander. Jelifeng said coldly. More than 70% of the Annam Protectorate's forces had not been mobilized at all. Only a small portion of the forces stationed at the foot of the mountain had been mobilized. Under such circumstances, Duan Wuji still failed in front of everyone. It was a crushing defeat. Jelifeng was obviously extremely dissatisfied. Tell Duan Wuji that if the communists retreat, do not recklessly follow them, unless we can confirm that the Tang army is truly routed. Suddenly, a cold and emotionless voice rang in everyone's ears. Yes, my lord. Hearing this voice, the others didn't react, but the guard who passed the order stiffened. He quickly put his hands together and bowed respectfully. He seemed to be very afraid. Along with that voice, the surrounding temperature also dropped significantly. This Duan Gichuan has quite a good eye. He's hit the nail on the head. Not far from Jelifeng, no one noticed a strange light flash through the eyes of Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Wuzong. This youth of the Tang dynasty called Wang Chong used a military strategy that was completely different from the other military commanders they knew of. A battle between two armies was a contest of spirit and courage, a contest of who could break through the defenses of the other side. This sort of method of intentionally showing weakness and retreating in order to advance was completely unheard of and unseen. Even Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Wuzong, who were ambitious and ruthless figures of the southwest, had never seen such a thing before. As the great general of Mengshi Zhao, Duan Gichuan had always lived in seclusion behind the scenes, rarely revealing himself. He had acutely noticed that the White Stone Legion's recent defeat was due to the Tang army showing weakness. This was completely in line with their own views. However, Duan Gichuan only said these words before standing motionlessly behind Jelifeng like a lifeless statue, no longer making a sound. Thump thump thump. As the war drums rumbled, the vast sea of Mengshi Zhao soldiers at the base of the mountain began to move as well. With the rumbling of the war drums, the vanguard of the army began to move once more. In a few short moments, the White Stone Corps, with the towering mountain at the center as the center, quickly arranged themselves into orderly square formations. All soldiers, hear my order. Rolling stone formation. Gallop, gallop, galloped. Following a resounding sound, a tall and sturdy figure wielding a long sword raised high walked out from the back of the formation. With Duan Wuxi's order, one figure after another, each of them brimming with majestic auras, slowly walked out of the formation and to the very front of the formation. These White Stone Legion commanders had all walked to the very front of the battle line. Boom! With a metallic clatter, a massive jade-white halo of thorns began to spread out from under the feet of Duan Wuxi's horse and spread to the feet of the other White Stone Legion soldiers. Then, like some sort of signal, one halo of thorns after another began to spread out from under the feet of the other White Stone Legion commanders, reinforcing the entire army. Countless halos vibrated as if they were one entity. When the aura of 100,000 White Stone Legion gathered together, it suddenly turned into a beam of light, majestically soaring into the sky. Buzz! The void distorted. Under the gaze of countless people, a huge white boulder the size of a mountain once again appeared in the void. Fight! 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 With a series of earth-shattering shouts, the White Stone Legion once again gathered, standing like a wall, and pushed toward the top of the mountain. In the Battle of Arai, we suffered heavy losses, and many of our heavy weapons and crossbows were unable to display their power. This is inextricably linked to the White Stone Legion. Chen Shusun gazed at the figure at the foot of the mountain and sighed, his heart heavy. So it's him. A thought flashed through Wang Chang's mind. The Annam Protectorate was a heavily fortified area in the southwest of the empire, and it had many generals. In this aspect, neither Meng Shizhao nor Uzun could compare. This was a matter of the empire's military reserves. Meng Shizhao and Uzun were barren wastelands of the art of war. In this aspect, they could not compare to the Tang dynasty. Because there were so many generals, it was impossible for Wang Chong to understand them one by one. However, among all the generals, Zhao Wujiang was definitely one of the most influential existences. Even back then, Wang Chong had heard of his name. This person had done very little, and his cultivation was not as powerful as Xin Yuzhongtong's, much less an imperial great general of Zhangqiu Jinxiong's level. But one thing was certain. Zhao Wujiang was a fierce general not one bit inferior to Duan Wuxi. In the army, there are fathers and sons, but on the battlefield, there are no brothers. Zhao Wujiang and Duan Wuxi were once good brothers, but they single-handedly brought about the current situation of the Tang dynasty in the southwest. Now that Duan Wuxi has appeared, he truly is more than enough to hold the line. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. The art of war was like the art of chess. Soldier against soldier, general against general. Wang Chong had no understanding of Zhao Wujiang's abilities, nor had he ever interacted with him before. But none of this was important, because starting from now, the true manipulator of the war was no longer Zhao Wujiang, but himself. The affairs of the world are like chess, and the art of war is like chess. Whether it's soldiers or generals, they are all chess pieces on the board. Daluan Ruozhen Jelifeng, come, let me see just how capable you are. Wang Chong looked down the mountain and waved his hand. Buzz! The mountain quaked. This time, more than a third of the Tang army, nearly 30,000 soldiers, began to advance, preparing for the second round of battle. Bang! 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 Looking down from the sky, one after another dazzling war halos were like ripples on the surface of a lake during a rainstorm. They continuously spread out from one point on the battlefield in all directions. The halo of charge, the halo of defense, the halo of black iron, the halo of tenacity, the halo of reckless bull, the halo of offense, the halo of strength, tens of thousands of war halos joined together to cover the entire mountain. Bzzz. The entire mountain seemed to have become an impenetrable fortress, exuding an intimidating aura. Kill! 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 The metal shield slammed into the ground, causing the earth to rumble, and all the Annan Protectorate army soldiers to roar in unison. The first battle had just ended, but the second battle was already upon them, and it was happening much faster than they had imagined. Nay! Boom! With the fierce neighing of warhorses, the vast sea of White Stone Legion, and the Annam Protectorate on the mountain, once more collided like two tides. Rumble. The moment the two armies collided, the entire earth began to groan. This did not seem like a battle between two armies, but more like a clash between two prehistoric beasts. Chapter 565. On the fierce battlefield, the strength of an individual had been weakened to the extreme. What was more important was the strength and cooperation of the army as a whole. In this battle, if the Annam Protectorate was a sturdy dam, then the Whitestone Legion was the most ferocious wave, one wave after another. Although the Annam Protectorate army had the advantage in numbers, and their training methods were extremely similar, in this battle, the individual quality and overall strength of the Annam Protectorate army, as well as the teamwork between soldiers, had completely surpassed the Whitestone Corps, displaying an absolute advantage. Going up and down the slope, the tens of thousands of Tang soldiers, with the help of the steel walls that Wang Chong had brought, were perfectly distributed across the mountain range, displaying an unbelievable defensive strength. On the battlefield, it often required 3 or more soldiers of the Whitestone Legion to put pressure on a Tang army. If they wanted to break through, they would need even more troops. On the plains, this sort of fighting strength was simply unimaginable. General has ordered that no one dares to retreat. Behead without exception. General has ordered that for every enemy killed, 10 taels of gold will be rewarded. For killing 10 enemies, you will be rewarded with the title of nobility, and your heirs will be protected. On the fierce battlefield, a Whitestone Legion officer with a scar on his face shouted himself hoarse. Aiming at a soldier in the crowd who was thinking of retreating, he lashed out with his whip, shattering that soldier's armor and sending him flying with a scream. Dusker Luochi was a famous supervisor of the Whitestone Legion. In battle, if he saw someone retreating, he would never hold back. This time, the commander-in-chief of the Whitestone Legion, Duan Wuxia, was personally taking the field. All the officers followed him, including Dusker Luochi. The officers suddenly became like an impenetrable fortress. Everyone was under pressure, and it was hard to tell how many officers were crazily supervising the battle like Dusker Luochi. First and second teams combine forces. Shields open the way, spearmen in the rear. Whoever can break through the Tang formation first will be heavily rewarded. Third and fourth teams substitute. Don't retreat. His Majesty is supervising the battle from behind. Whoever dares to retreat will have their entire family executed. They're just putting on a brave front. They're no match for us. We know all of their training. If we can defeat them once, we can definitely defeat them twice, or even thrice. 100,000 soldiers. 100,000 soldiers. Our Whitestone Legion has 100,000 soldiers, while the Tang regiments on the mountain range only have 100,000 at most. We don't believe that we can't break through their defense line with so many people. Charge! Charge! Steady! Hold on. All the generals of the Whitestone Legion were supervising the battle from the front. Thorny halos flashed in the sky one after another. Unlike the first wave of attack, the Whitestone Legion went all out this time. Compared to the frequent movements of the Whitestone Corps, the Annam Protectorate army was far less complicated. Giant shield formation. Spearmen get ready. Ready for battle at any time. That as the model for the Whitestone Legion, the Annam Protectorate was far less complicated. If the Tang dynasty claimed to be number 2 in infantry battles, no one in the world would dare claim to be number 1. In this aspect, they didn't even need much guidance from Wang Chong. Not bad. On the summit, Wang Chong nodded to himself at this sight. The Annam Protectorate had always been a well-trained army, and the Battle of Arai had eliminated many of the weaker soldiers, leaving behind only the elite of the elite. The greatest advantage of this elite was their individual strength, rich battlefield experience, and proficiency in teamwork. Most importantly, they had a strong ability to execute battle tactics. In the entire world, there was no general who didn't need subordinates that could command such a well-trained, highly capable, and elite army. Wang Chong had always believed in one thing. The quality of an army was first and foremost, and only quantity could be ensured. But if he could only choose one of the two, a well-trained and high-quality army was the best choice. Whether it was logistics, fighting power, or the pressure on the empire, they could all be minimized. In the entire world, the Anqi Protectorate Army commanded by Gao Xianji and Feng Chongqing, the twin paragons of the empire, is the strongest. It only has around 30,000 soldiers, but they are armed to the teeth with ballistae and weapons. Moreover, these 30,000 soldiers can be mounted on foot, and each soldier has a warhorse. Most importantly, they often cooperate with the cavalry of the kingdoms of Anqi, so they are extremely familiar with the tactics of nomadic tribes. Together with the elite, valiant, and strongest soldiers of the empire, the 30,000 regular soldiers, the 20,000 reserve soldiers in the rear of the Qixi Desert, and the more than 100,000 soldiers from the small kingdoms of the western regions that obey the orders of the Tang dynasty. This army is completely capable of intimidating the hundreds of thousands of enemy soldiers. It's undeniable that the Anqi Protectorate Army is the strongest in terms of fighting power. But below the Anqi Protectorate Army, it's probably not much inferior to the Big Dipper Army commanded by Geshu Han of Longxi. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Geshu Han's Big Dipper Army was so powerful that it had stopped countless attacks from the Uzan Empire. Yet the mighty Uzan Empire had been unable to do anything to him, unable to advance east even when Geshu Han was standing in its way. One could easily imagine the strength of the Big Dipper Army. Of all the protectorate armies of the Tang dynasty, only the Annam Protectorate had the fewest battles. For this reason, the Annam Protectorate was the weakest of all the protectorates. But after the Battle of Arai, the 180,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate had been eliminated, and the remaining 60,000 had become the elite of the elite. Their fighting power had risen instead of falling. A single person could command 60,000 of the purest Annam Protectorate elites, add on the thousands of Annam Protectorate generals, and add on the two fierce generals of his father in Xinyu Zhongtong. This was an extravagant dream that Wang Chong had never dreamed of. In the War of the Southwest, he could still maintain such a complete army. This was something that Wang Chong had never dared to imagine before. Daluan Ruozan, Huashu Wuzong, Jelifeng Duan Gichuan. As long as I am here, you will never be able to cross this mountain. And you will never be able to wreak havoc in the Southwest like you did in the past. Ambition comes with a price, and the greater the ambition, the greater the price. Now it's time for you to pay that price. Let us see just who will be the final victor of the Southwest. Wang Chong's robes flapped in the wind as he looked down the mountain, a harsh light in his eyes. Rumble! With a heaven-shaking boom, a white figure, man and horse, flashing with thorns, slashed into the Annam Protectorate's defense line like a massive sword. Aya! With an earth-shattering explosion, the giant metal shield, as well as the shield bearers and spear bearers behind it, were all sent flying like kites with their strings cut. The great Tang defense line that had held out for so long had been broken in a flash. All soldiers charge. Chapter 566. With Duan Wuji personally leading the charge, the White Stone Legion was completely different from before. Compared to before, the destructive power and charging power they displayed were completely different. I don't believe that 100,000 White Stone Legion can't break through the camp of these defeated generals. Everyone follow me. Whoever dares to retreat will be executed without exception. Duan Wuji waved his long sword. Behind him, all the personal guards of the White Stone Legion formed a dense formation and surged forward like the tide. In front of Daluan Ruozan and Huashu Wuzong, he was easily defeated by the Tang dynasty and reprimanded by Jelifeng. Duan Wuji's heart was filled with arrogance and anger. Kaboom! Duan Wuzong's dantian trembled, and the rolling gang qi transformed into millions of propitious qi that shot out. Duan Wuzong sat on his divine chariot and raised his long sword. The void behind him changed, and a Buddha holding a medicine basket appeared. Bang bang bang! The void trembled and balls of light shot out from the surroundings of the son of Buddha. The light changed and turned into a medicinal pestle, a medicinal pot, a medicinal stone, a medicinal bottle, a medicinal vat, and many other kinds of instruments. It was the medicine king of Arai legend. The religion of Arai 6 Zhao was completely different from that of the Central Plains. Everything had its own system. The Medicine King was the medicine god, and the god of strength of Arai. Duan Wuji cultivated the Medicine King, and everyone in Mengxi Zhao knew about it. Kaboom! Duan Wuji activated the Medicine King, and a huge halo of thorns surged, with Duan Wuji as the center, constantly vibrating and rotating. In an instant the earth and mountains shook. Duan Wuji's robes fluttered, and the hair on his temples fluttered. In an instant a majestic storm-like aura exploded from his body. Boom! The halo shook lightly, and within a radius of more than 10 zhang, all the shield soldiers of the Annam Protectorate had their bones broken, and like kites with their strings cut, they flew in all directions. Everyone advance, with Duan Wuji at the center, and all the White Stone Legion generals supporting him. The entire legion was like a giant spider web, and they rolled toward the summit. Boom, boom, boom. Dust billowed and screams rang out. Not a single person in the mighty Annam Protectorate army had been able to stop Duan Wuzong. Kill. With Duan Wuzong leading the way, the morale of the White Stone soldiers soared, all of them shouting as they followed Duan Wuzong up the mountain. Although Wang Chong had brought a large number of war machines from the capital, and had constructed steel walls along the sides of the mountain, these steel walls were only meant for cavalry. They were of little use against infantry, and at the very least, they were of little use against the Whitestone Corps. Rumble! Like a breaching dam, a gap appeared in the impregnable Tang dynasty defense line, and under Duan Wuji's lead, this gap continued to grow. Not bad. Uncle Duan is truly doing his best. At the base of the mountain, Crown Prince Finjie watched the battle on the summit, a hint of surprise in his eyes. Behind him, Jelifeng, Duan Gichuan, and the others also nodded their heads. It's better to provoke the general into action than to invite the general, was one of the most ancient proverbs of the art of war. With Duan Wuji personally taking the field, the White Stone Legion's performance was on a completely different level. The White Stone Legion truly does have some strength. Although they can't compare to Uzin's cavalry, they're still an elite force to be reckoned with. On the other side, Daluan Ruozin and Huashu Wuzong said nothing, but they inwardly nodded in agreement. Daluan Ruozin and Huashu Wuzong had not witnessed the Battle of Arai, only learning of the result after the battle. In truth, when the news of the defeat of the Annam Protectorate arrived, the two of them had been rather surprised. There was no doubt that the Mengxi Zhao Empire under Jelifeng's rule was completely different from any other time. The fighting strength they displayed was ample proof of this point. Roar! Kail! Follow the general and kill all the Tang people. All the soldiers of the White Stone Legion seemed to have been injected with a shot of adrenaline, roaring as they charged up the mountain. On the slope, the Tang dynasty was in an extremely bad situation. This was different from the first time. The first time, the Tang dynasty had held out for a very long time before collapsing. But this time, the speed at which the defense line crumbled was much faster than anyone had imagined. Leading the way is a good thing, but the heart is easy to break. A mighty commander of an army should learn to charge into enemy lines before the outcome of the battle is clear and risk danger. This isn't a wise decision. On both sides, on the entire mountain, the only person who remained calm and unmoved was Wang Chong. Duan Wuji had led the way, raising the morale and drive of the White Stone Legion. It was an astonishing sight, but in Wang Chong's eyes, it wasn't even worth a glance. All he has is courage and strength but no foresight. This Duan Wuji can't even be considered a third-rate general. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. For a general to personally lead the charge was definitely a strategic necessity, not just because the sovereign above had ordered it, or to tear apart a section of the Tang army's battle line. In Wang Chong's view, Duan Wuji's grasp of the art of war was probably not even that of an ordinary general. If the commander-in-chief of an army never moved, and always led the charge in every battle, then what difference was there between a general and a soldier? Boom! Duan Wuji's massive charge did not last for very long. Boom! Just when Duan Wuji's momentum was at its fiercest, there was a massive boom as Duan Wuji's unstoppable charge came to a screeching halt. like a flood meeting a dam, or a gale meeting a steep cliff. In the middle of the vast army, between two lofty steel walls, a stalwart figure stood like a pillar that held up the heavens, blocking Duan Wuji's attack, and also blocking the path of the White Stone Legion. A single general, a single black horse, had been able to block Duan Wuji's unstoppable momentum. Duan Wu. Every word was squeezed out through clenched teeth. The sound of gnashing teeth could be heard, and every word was squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth. His red cloak flapping in the wind, the dark-faced general held his saber in front of him. His icy eyes glared viciously at Duan Wuzong, who was charging down the mountain, as if he wanted to eat him alive. Zhao Wujiang. Duan Wuji's expression froze when he saw the general, who had appeared out of nowhere. But very quickly, a monstrous murderous aura erupted from his body. When two armies fight, they each serve their own masters. Zhao Wujiang, don't blame me. Those who stand in my way will die. Rumble. The massive ring of light shuddered and exploded with a heaven-shaking rumble. Duan Wuzong's body exploded with a brilliant light, and he swung his long sword. In the air behind him, the medicine monarch's eyes narrowed, and countless medicine jars, pestles, and jars, each as heavy as a mountain, bombarded Zhao Wujiang like a storm. Boom! One of the medicine jars brushed past a steel wall that weighed several thousand kilograms, directly tearing it apart and sending it flying. Buzz! There was a flash of light, and all of the attacking medicinal stones, jars, and jars seemed to hit an invisible wall. They stopped when they were still 3 or 4 meters away from Zhao Wujiang, hovering in the air. The destructive medicinal stones, jars, and jars formed from stellar energy were completely unable to get within several meters of Zhao Wujiang. Traitor! If I had known that you would rebel today, I would have killed you back then. Zhao Wujiang's eyes were bloodshot, and they spat out towering flames of fury. Boom! A bloody flame flashed, and all of the medicinal stones, jars, and pestles formed from stellar energy were incinerated like wildfire, vanishing into nothingness. The bloody flame rebounded and fiercely collided with Duan Wuji's stellar energy. Rumble! A scorching essence chi shot into the sky, accompanied by the rumbling of metal. The stellar energy on Zhao Wujiang and Duan Wuji's bodies violently collided. In the blink of an eye, the moment the stellar energy collided, the two leaped forward. Clang! Saber and sword clashed, the horrifying stellar energy flames accompanied by the clashing of the halo of thorns instantly causing a violent explosion. Around the two, both the soldiers of the Tang dynasty and the White Stone Legion had no time to react or dodge. Screams rang out as they were sent flying. Kill! Kill! Behind Zhao Wujiang, the other generals of the Annam Protectorate unsheathed their swords and roared, leading the vast Annam Protectorate soldiers down the mountain. At almost the same time, the generals of the White Stone Legion arrived. In the entire War of the Southwest, the two armies with the most similar styles and the deepest grudges were locked in a fierce battle. It's enough! At the summit of the mountain, Wang Chong slowly withdrew his gaze and looked in another direction. A battle between two generals would not decide the outcome of a war. The moment Zhao Wujiang appeared and intercepted Duan Wuji, the entire war had taken a different direction, the next phase. Now it's my turn. Jelifeng Duan Gichuan, this time, your White Stone Legion won't just lose 8,000 some soldiers. Wang Chong coldly smiled as he gazed at those two unmoving figures at the base of the mountain. Etiquette would never be able to enlighten an opponent. Only war could leave an indelible mark. The Empire's southwest had already paid a heavy price in the early stages, and now, it was finally time for them to pay the price for their actions. Although Wang Chong's current cultivation level was still not worth mentioning, the art of war had always been a contest of wits. Jelifeng, Duan Gichuan, Fenjie, and even Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Wuzong. No matter what glorious past these foreign warlords had, no matter what ambitions they had for the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong would let them know what the might of a war saint was. Only the most painful of lessons could make these foreign titans learn to respect the Tang dynasty. Pass on my order. Begin the operation. Wang Chong waved his right hand, waving the command flag. Chapter 567. Boom! The blood-red banner fluttered above the summit, and then suddenly fell. A moment later, the mountain slope suddenly changed. The Annam Protectorate, which had been desperately resisting, suddenly relaxed, like a bowstring that had been pulled taut to its limit, and then suddenly lost its strength. In a flash, all the White Stone Legion soldiers, except for Duan Wuji's line of defense, subconsciously gave chase. Not good. Duan Wuji's eyes and ears were focused on all directions. When he saw this out of the corner of his eye, his eyelids suddenly twitched. At any other time, he would have had enough time to stop this. But at this time, Duan Wuji had only just opened his mouth to speak when a blood-red light washed over him. A massive saber slashed down with destructive energy, cleaving the heavens and splitting the earth. Rumble! Stellar energy vibrated as the two tyrannical energies collided, transforming into a sharp pillar of energy that was several zhang thick. The order that Duan Wuji had been about to spit out was instantly swallowed by Zhao Wujiang's saber. Retreat immediately. Don't pursue. At the base of the mountain, Crown Prince Finjie trembled as he saw this scene. His heart filled with panic, he involuntarily took a few steps forward. It was only when the cold wind blew that he realized what was happening. The battle cries on the summit shook the heavens, so how could he hear his own voice? Oh no! The same thing is happening again. It's this move again. At the base of the mountain, Daluan Ruozin and Huashu Wuzong also paled. If they remembered correctly, not too long ago, the Annam Protectorate had used this exact same move to defeat the White Stone Legion. Kill! Kill! With the general holding the fort, the Annam Protectorate can't hold on much longer. The White Stone Legion soldiers at the back had no idea what was happening in front of them. They only felt that the space in front of them had loosened and immediately squeezed through. The brilliance of Wang Chong in choosing this mountain to fight the final battle was once again reflected. The incline of the slope, coupled with the layers of steel walls covering the surface of the mountain, greatly limited the vision of the soldiers at the rear, making it impossible for them to discover the battle situation in front of them in a timely manner. Furthermore, Wang Chong had changed his tactics slightly. Boom! A group of people swarmed forward, and the originally orderly formation was once again thrown into disorder. Duan Wuji's suppressive effect immediately disappeared. Kill! On the top of the mountain, the spearmen and axemen of the Annam Protectorate formed a tight formation. When the White Stone Legion's front line fell into chaos, they stood like a wall and quickly charged over. Clang! 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 The sound of metal clashing rang out incessantly, and waves of miserable screams resounded through the clouds. An army that fought on its own, without any organization or formation, was like a mass of loose sand. In front of a regular army, it was completely vulnerable. Pooh! Pooh! Cold spears pierced through the chest and out the back. In an instant, the soldiers of the White Stone Legion could not dodge in time, and fell one after another. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 100, 1,000. In the blink of an eye, thousands of soldiers of the White Stone Legion had fallen one after another. In front of the Annam Protectorate, the chaotic soldiers of the White Stone Legion could not resist at all. All troops in the rear, press forward with all your strength. All troops in the front, hold down the front line. Without orders, no one is allowed to pursue the enemy. Boom! In a flash, Duan Wuji fiercely pushed back Zhao Wujiang with a single slash of his sword. With a turn he pulled away, and his entire face turned green. Before the battle, he had already planned to guard against this move of the Annam Protectorate, but he did not expect that even though he was prepared, he still fell for it. Boom! In a flash of bloody light, Zhao Wujiang's saber energy followed. Duan Wuji only had time to give this order, before he was once more swept up by Zhao Wujiang's saber energy. Duan Wuji, you still have time to give orders? You should take care of yourself first. Take a strike from me. Damn it, Zhao Wujiang. Do you think you can hold me down like this? I want you dead. Duan Wuji's furious roars reached the heavens. But no matter how angry he was, the moment Wang Chong had sent out Zhao Wujiang, his advantage had been completely nullified. But even so, Duan Wuji's order had still been effective. The White Stone Legion had learned everything from the Tang dynasty, and the Tang Protectorate Army. In terms of carrying out orders, they were not much inferior to the Tang dynasty. Rear troops follow. Advance in force. Front troops pull back. Hold the line. Anyone who dares to charge into the formation will be immediately executed. Hurry. Anyone who dares to slack off will be dealt with according to military law. Hundreds of White Stone Legion officers revolved around Duan Wuxi's order, and orders were quickly passed down through these leaders of the White Stone Legion. In a few short moments, the White Stone Legion was divided into two groups, using the crumbling front line as a base. The crumbling White Stone Legion soldiers on the front line were cut off, and in the rear, the White Stone Legion quickly formed a new line of defense. Behind them, layers upon layers of White Stone Legion soldiers pressed forward. In the face of the 100,000 White Stone Legion soldiers, the previous wave of dispersal was completely insignificant. Duan Wuxi has already grasped the essence of commanding troops. This is no longer a simple imitation, but a true grasp of the art of changing formations, forming his own style. It seems that in the many years that Jelifeng has ruled the 6th Zhao of Arai, he truly has carried out many bold and decisive reforms. At the very least, Meng Shizhao truly does have the strength to challenge the Annam Protectorate. Wang Chong stood on the summit, looking down at the soldiers of the White Stone Legion, as they swiftly restored order and stabilized the front line. He couldn't help but nod to himself. Even as an enemy, Wang Chong had to admit that Jelifeng's rule over the 6th Zhao of Arai and Meng Shizhao's empire to this extent had not been a fluke. The White Stone Legion led by Duan Wuxi had caused great damage to Xinyu Zhongtong's Annam Protectorate in the Arai Plains. This was definitely not a coincidence. Now the Meng Shizhao Empire indeed had the capital to expand its military. At the very least, in this wave of attack, the White Stone Legion was able to decisively abandon a portion of its soldiers and rebuild a new front line in a short period of time. This made the early tactical advantage of the Annam Protectorate disappear. This was not something that any legion could easily do. But unfortunately, it's still useless. Wang Chong sneered, made a hand gesture, and conveyed another order. The blood-red flag once again danced on the summit. Bang, bang, bang. All the soldiers of the White Stone Legion who had fallen into chaos and were abandoned were harvested, one by one, falling down like wooden stakes. Roar. With a roar, the sabresmen, spearmen, and axemen retreated while the shieldsmen charged forward. From the middle of the mountain, tens of thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers once more charged at the White Stone Legion. But from the middle of the mountain up, the entire Annam Protectorate remained motionless. Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Yan, Chen Shusun, and all the high-ranking officers of the Annam Protectorate, except for Zhao Wujiang, stood motionless from the middle of the mountain to the summit. It was like this battle had nothing to do with them. Kill! Kill! The countless Annam Protectorate soldiers once more charged at the formation of the White Stone Legion. Pressing, constantly pressing. The same scene repeated itself as tens of thousands of Great Tang soldiers continued to charge forward. Without Duan Wuxi, the White Stone Legion could no longer pose a fatal threat to the Annam Protectorate. Bang! As the Annam Protectorate and the White Stone Legion charged at each other, the pressure and entanglement reaching their limits, the same thing happened once more. Retreat! Hurry and retreat! Caught off guard by the White Stone Legion, the Annam Protectorate at the very front suddenly began to retreat. And then, the strangest thing happened. The tens of thousands of soldiers of the White Stone Corps subconsciously chased after Wang Chong like a heavy fist striking the air. In just a few seconds, the orderly and disciplined White Stone Legion once more fell into the same chaos. Daluan Ruozhen, Huashu Wuzong, Jelifeng Duan Gichuan Finjie. Right under the eyes of these formidable powerhouses of the southwest border, the White Stone Legion, under Wang Chong's command, once more fell into the same chaos and predicament. Hiss! At this moment, let alone these foreign powerhouses like Jelifeng and Huashu Wuzong, even the motionless Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan on the summit of the mountain sucked in a deep breath. Duan Wuxi was already doing his utmost to avoid being seduced by Wang Chong and falling into the same predicament. All the commanders of the White Stone Legion were also doing their utmost to maintain order. But in the blink of an eye, the entire White Stone Legion was once more being played around in the palm of Wang Chang's hand. Hiss, this kid. Duan Wuji is simply not his match. He's completely being played around in the palm of his hand. At the base of the mountain, in the battle formation, Dalawan Ruozan had at some point stopped gently waving the fan in his hand. The corners of his mouth, which had always been calm and carefree, slowly tightened into a solemn expression. I'm afraid I've underestimated this kid. This was the only thought in Dalawan Ruozan's mind at this moment. All of Wang Chang's previous battles were meaningless to Dalawan Ruozan, because he had never seen them at all. What he had really seen were the 3 battles between Wang Chang and the White Stone Legion. The first 2 battles did not leave too deep an impression on Dalawan Ruozan. At most, he discovered that Wang Chang had some talent. But when it came to the 3rd time, when it was the battle before his eyes, the feeling was completely different. No matter whether Duan Wuji was willing or not, no matter how hard the White Stone Legion generals worked, no matter how good their teamwork was, no matter how much the White Stone Legion had gone through in front of the youth called Wang Chang at the top of the mountain, it was not worth mentioning at all. A casual and simple order from Wang Chang had rendered Duan Wuji and the White Stone Legion generals' efforts to naught. No matter how much vigilance and preparation the White Stone Legion soldiers had in their hearts, in front of the Annam Protectorate, they were completely unable to resist, and once again fell into a trap. What a terrifying attainment in the art of war! This youth called Wang Chang is probably even more troublesome than we imagined. He will become the greatest obstacle for our Uzan Empire in the southwest. As this thought flashed through his mind, Dalawan Ruozan's brows suddenly furrowed deeply. He never frowned easily, but now, everything had changed. Chapter 568. Thump Thump Thump. While Dalawan Ruozan, Huashu Wazong, and the others were still in shock at the tactics and strategies displayed by the Tang troops on the summit, Wang Chang's tactics had already produced an immediate effect. Thump Thump Thump. Dense ranks of Tang troops charged down from the summit. The scene of harvesting like wheat once more appeared. One after another, the soldiers of the White Stone Legion screamed as they fell to the spears of the Annam Protectorate. Kill! Don't be afraid of them. The eyes of some of the valiant White Stone Legion soldiers turned blood red as they roared and attempted to charge forward, fighting for their lives with the soldiers of the Annam Protectorate. But in a flash of light, swoosh swoosh swoosh, sabers and swords stabbed at them from all sides, stabbing through their chests and emerging from their backs. In the blink of an eye, these fearless White Stone Corps soldiers dropped to the ground, their eyes wide open. This shouldn't be happening. When these warriors of the White Stone Legion fell at the last moment, their hearts were filled with a deep sense of unwillingness. On the shores of Arai, they had killed more than one elite of the Tang dynasty's Annam Protectorate. On the bodies of these fallen Annam Protectorate elites, they had built up a powerful self-confidence. The White Stone Legion was not the slightest bit weaker than the Annam Protectorate. No, it far surpassed them. But no one could understand why things had turned out this way in the blink of an eye. This battle had been fought in a complete mess. Although they had seen everything clearly, they had no idea what had happened when they were retreating. We clearly had the advantage, so why did things suddenly turn out like this? As these thoughts flashed through their minds, the minds of these warriors of the White Stone Legion went black, and then they knew nothing else. Thump thump thump. Countless corpses covered the surface of the mountain like a sea. This time, the number of White Stone Legion soldiers who died was much higher than the last time, and the speed of the deaths was incomparably fast. When the number of people involved in a war reached the level of more than 10,000, the number of people dying in a breath's time was always beyond imagination. Warning: the number of Annam Protectorate Army soldiers killed in battle is 1021. The obliteration line has been lowered further. On the mountaintop, a series of familiar voices poured down from his mind like a waterfall. When he heard these voices, Brain Wang stood on the mountaintop, his long hair and robes fluttering in the wind. A smile appeared on his face. The White Stone Legion only has 80,000 soldiers left. The army of the Mingxi Zhao Empire was very similar to the army of the Tang dynasty. It was primarily infantry, and of all the legions, the shield-like soldiers of the White Stone Legion would always stand on the very front lines of the battlefield. Without the protection of the White Stone Legion, the threat that the Mingxi Zhao Empire posed to the Tang dynasty would be greatly reduced. The Tang dynasty was famed throughout the world for the quality of its equipment, and all its soldiers were armed to the teeth. Without the existence of the White Stone Legion, the Tang dynasty's superiority in equipment would be able to be quickly displayed. 1021 soldiers have died, a casualty ratio of nearly 20-1. Not bad. If this ratio can be maintained, the 100,000 soldiers of the Tang dynasty will be able to wipe out the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengxi Yusang army. Wang Chong inwardly sneered. When it came to those ambitious wolves who coveted the Central Plains, coveted the Tang dynasty, only by teaching them a harsh lesson would they understand what people and what things could not be offended or coveted. Retreat! 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 On the mountaintop, everyone was in a panic. At the start, the 8,000-some casualties hadn't meant much, but now that the death toll had reached 20,000 and was still rising, everything changed. 20,000 out of 100,000 soldiers was equivalent to 1 out of every 5 being killed. The number of corpses scattered across the mountain was not something that could be ignored. Hurry and retreat. Damn it. Just what did these scoundrels do? 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves. After being defeated 3 times by the Tang army using the same method, all the commanders of the White Stone Legion were terrified. They had completely understood their strategy, understood their intentions, but they had been utterly unable to stop themselves from being defeated by the same simple strategy. Bastard! Duan Wuji was both shocked and infuriated. The Medicine King behind him, and the halo of giant strength, of the thorns at his feet, were pushed to their limits. Boom boom boom. Wave after wave of stellar energy rumbled toward Zhao Wujiang. That sharp sword that could cut a hair was also swung to its limits by Duan Wuji. A storm of attacks raining down on Zhao Wujiang. It's useless. A bone-chilling voice came from the other side. Zhao Wujiang's deep gaze was fixed on Duan Wuzong. He had long since seen through the initiative, and clearly understood what Duan Wuzong meant. Isn't it too late to escape me now? Bang! Zhao Wujiang stamped his right foot on the solid ground, and charged forward like a god of war. His long saber fiercely chopped down at Duan Wuzong with the power to split the sky. The two of them once again engaged in a fierce battle. No matter how much Duan Wuji wanted to retreat, no matter how hard he tried to escape from Zhao Wujiang, he could not succeed. Bastard, you madman! Duan Wuji was furious. The losses of the White Stone Legion had left him bleeding. He had personally trained every soldier, and he had poured a great deal of blood and sweat into this White Stone Legion. Although the White Stone Legion had the numerical advantage, it was completely toyed around in the hands of the Tang dynasty. Wave after wave of White Stone Legion soldiers had died on the slope before they could even display their strength. Although the leading generals had tried their best to restrain the army and reorganize the formation, in the face of the Tang dynasty's strategy, all their efforts were in vain. Ha ha ha! Duan Wuji, I know that you have been learning from the Tang dynasty, and I have always known that you want to surpass the Tang dynasty and surpass me. Mengxi Zhao has hidden his ambition. He has helped Mengxi Zhao so much in the Tang dynasty, from the military to farming, from Confucianism to silkworm weaving, and after all these, he still wants to touch the Tang dynasty. It is despicable and hateful. But Duan Wuji, Mengxi Zhao will not succeed in the end, and you will not succeed in the end. Do you know why? Do you know where the gap between us is? Looking at the anxious face of Duan Wuji, who wanted to leave and tried his best, but could not get rid of him completely, at this moment, Zhao Wujiang only felt very happy in his heart. So many of his colleagues had died on the banks of Arai, which made Zhao Wujiang's heart ache. He had once thought that it was his responsibility. Because of this, he deeply blamed himself. But now, seeing those Mengxi Zhao's people who had killed the Annam Protectorate on the banks of Arai fall one after another, and seeing Duan Wuji's twisted and furious face, Zhao Wujiang only felt very happy in his heart. Zhao Wujiang, you're bullshitting. Duan Wuji roared angrily. His eyes were red and bloodshot. Ha ha ha, Duan Wuji, you don't want to hear it, but I want to say it. Do you know why Mengshi Zhao and Jelifeng can never succeed? Do you know why you and your White Stone Legion can never compare to the Annam Protectorate? Because of us, because of the Great Tang, we have far more talents than you can imagine. Talented generals, talented ministers, talented officials. These people might not appear in the same place for a while, or even for a very long time, and you might not even know of their existence. But as long as the Empire is in trouble, as long as the Empire needs them, they will descend from the sky, one after the other, and appear in front of you in an endless stream. You think that it's enough to surpass me? Ha ha ha, Duan Wuji, you're too naive. Although I am a high-ranking general of the Annam Protectorate, I am nothing in the Tang dynasty. There are hundreds and thousands of people who surpass Zhao Wujiang, whether it is in cultivation or military attainments, and it is not just a small number. In the end, I, Zhao Wujiang, am just a nobody. Do you know who was the real commander of this war, and the person who defeated you? It was a 17-year-old youth, a 17-year-old youth. Duan Wuji, can you imagine? An ordinary 17-year-old youth was able to beat all of you into a complete rout, able to toy with the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of your Mengshi Yusang coalition in the palm of his hand. Bullshit. Duan Wuji finally couldn't help but curse. Although he knew that Zhao Wujiang was intentionally provoking him, Duan Wuji still couldn't suppress his anger. Defeating the Tang dynasty, reviving the sixth Zhao of Arai, spreading the name of the Mengshi Zhao Empire to the entire continent, planting the banner of Arai throughout the 9 continents. This was not the dream of Emperor Jelifeng alone. It was the dream of millions of Mengshi Zhao people, and Mengshi Zhao Great General Duan Gechuan, Crown Prince Fenjie, Duan Wuji, the White Elephant Corps, the Arai Corps, and all the other generals. Every Mengshi Zhao general had this intense desire and dream buried deep within their hearts. Thus, this war had never been the dream of Emperor Jelifeng alone. This war had never been initiated by him alone. This was the long-cherished wish of all the people of Mengshi Zhao. As long as the Tang dynasty remained on the shores of the Arai, as long as Mengshi Zhao remained a vassal of the Tang dynasty, and had not yet surpassed the Tang dynasty, generals like him would continue to appear. Duan Wuji could tolerate Zhao Wujiang's insults, but he could not tolerate Zhao Wujiang's slander of his dream. Swish! Just when Duan Wuji was at his most agitated and enraged, swish! A blood-colored longsword surged with raging flames. Like a white steed galloping through a gap, it grew larger and larger. With a swish, it pierced through Duan Wuji's stellar energy and pierced deep into his shoulder blade. With a squelch, the bright red tip of the sword emerged from Duan Wuji's back. Ah! With a shrill scream, Zhao Wujiang's tyrannical, swift, and destructive stellar energy transformed into thousands of threads that pierced through his shoulder blade and into Duan Wuji's body, penetrating his meridians. All his rage was instantly extinguished. Zhao Wujiang pressed forward and slammed a palm into Duan Wuji's chest. Boom! Under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, Duan Wuji's body curled up into a ball and spun like a kite with its string cut. General! Chapter 569. Time seemed to have slowed down countless times at this moment. Countless pairs of eyes followed Duan Wuji's figure as he moved in the void. Even Wang Chong, who was standing at the top of the mountain, couldn't help but feel his eyelids twitch. Zhao Wujiang. A hint of surprise flashed in the depths of Wang Chong's eyes. Duan Wuji was definitely not a weakling. A person who could lead the White Stone Legion to rise suddenly and become one of the strongest legions in Mengshi Zhao, defeating the Annam Protectorate by the Chaotic Sea, and making a name for himself with the Annam Protectorate was definitely not a weakling. In fact, in the history that Wang Chong knew, Duan Wuji was a fierce general of Mengshi Zhao, and his reputation was like the sun in the sky. In fact, he actually surpassed Zhao Wujiang. Wang Chong originally thought that Zhao Wujiang could resist Duan Wuji and render him unable to play a role, which was already quite good. He hadn't expected that Zhao Wujiang would be able to completely block Duan Wuzong and even injure him with a single blow. sending him flying. In terms of strength, he completely overwhelmed Duan Wuji. Boom! Duan Wuji's figure fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground like a cannonball. Where Duan Wuji's back landed, the ground instantly collapsed like a spider web. Billowing smoke and dust soared into the sky and instantly covered the ground. General! General! That all the soldiers of the White Stone Legion in the surroundings were all pale with fright, and they all swarmed away like clouds. Duan Wuji was the soul of the White Stone Legion. For the entire White Stone Legion, if anything happened to Duan Wuji, it would definitely be an earth-shattering nightmare. The White Stone Legion has lost. Wang Chong looked down from above. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes when he saw this scene. It wasn't that a general couldn't take the lead and lead the army into battle, but that would be too risky. If one wanted to set an example for others and take the lead, one must first be unbelievably strong. If they weren't strong enough, like Duan Wuji, and something happened to them, then the morale of the army would instantly collapse. A general who took the lead could easily raise the morale of the army, but he could also cause the morale of the army to plummet due to his own mistakes. Perhaps Duan Wuji himself did not realize that the morale of the White Stone Legion had collapsed. This is what it means to succeed and fail because of Xiaohe. Wang Chong held his hands behind his back as he looked at the place where the smoke and dust were rising from the foot of the mountain. Morale was never something illusory. When an ordinary soldier wanted to go all out and fight with you, it was completely different from when he was timid and only wanted to escape. If it was expressed in terms of morale, then the former was 100%, while the latter had fallen to 0. On the battlefield, morale was always one of the core factors that determined the victory or defeat of an army. Protect the general. You guys lead the general to retreat first. I'll hold them off. Brothers, the general treats us like brothers. No matter what, we can't let anything happen to the general. Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. The general has treated us well. Now is the time to repay the general. Rumble. Without waiting for Zhao Wujiang to continue his pursuit, countless soldiers of the White Stone Legion rushed toward Zhao Wujiang without any regard for their lives. No matter how rotten and corrupt an army was, it would never lack loyal and devoted subordinates. As the commander of the White Stone Legion, Duan Wuji had countless elite soldiers under his command, and there was no lack of such subordinates. Bang bang bang. The huge halo of thorns outside Zhao Wujiang's body rumbled, and the surging stellar energy shattered mountains, sending the White Stone Legion soldiers flying. Before these White Stone Legion soldiers could even land on the ground, they were already corpses. But even so, there were still fearless experts rushing over, frantically blocking Zhao Wujiang's path. Kill! Kill Duan Wuji! Don't run, Duan Wuji! Kill these rebels and open the way for General Zhao. Brothers, go! The time for revenge has come. Don't run, Duan Wuji! Duan Wuji had many loyal personal guards, and on Zhao Wujiang's side, there were also many capable and brave subordinates. On the hillside, when the elites of the White Stone Legion rushed over, Zhao Wujiang's subordinates also rushed forward to meet them. Both sides were fearless, and the grudge between Zhao Wujiang and Duan Wuji, as well as the hatred between the Annam Protectorate and the White Stone Legion, was enough to make the two groups fight to the death. Boom boom boom. Wave after wave of energy swept in all directions. The two groups of elites were like a meat grinder, fighting each other. On the other side, a group of core members of the White Stone Legion was shocked to see this scene. They carried Duan Wuji and frantically fled down the hill. Bang bang! Zhao Wujiang's stellar energy vibrated, sending more than 10 waves of White Stone Legion elites flying like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. But in the end, he could not help but sigh. What a pity! That bastard Duan Wuji is not fated to die in the end. Even though the Annam Protectorate also had many experts, Zhao Wujiang was still one step behind. The White Stone Legion's frenzied interception finally allowed Duan Wuji to escape. Retreat! Retreat quickly! With Duan Wuji's defeat, the Annam Protectorate's momentum rose, and the White Stone Legion collapsed like a landslide. This was even more severe. Unlike the previous time, the White Stone Legion was truly defeated this time. Want to leave? Do you think it's that easy? At the peak of the mountain, the wind was howling. Wang Chong stood at the top of the mountain, overseeing the entire situation. His eyes were on all sides, and his ears were on all sides. How could he let them retreat so easily? With a wave of his hand, the entire battlefield changed. Countless Annam Protectorate soldiers covered the sky and the earth, and once again, the two sides were entangled. When the enemy advances, I retreat. When the enemy retreats, I advance. When the enemy attacks, I defend. When the enemy defends, I attack. Wang Chong was only using some simple military tactics, but it was enough to make the complacent and ambitious White Stone Legion play around in the palm of his hand. Kill! Countless Annam Protectorate soldiers covered the sky and the earth, howling as they charged down from the mountain. The long-term training of the Annam Protectorate revealed itself at this moment. Even in the midst of sprinting and charging, the Annam Protectorate soldiers still maintained a tight formation and tacit cooperation. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, layer by layer. The White Stone Legion soldiers kept slowing down as they were pinned down by the Annam Protectorate at the back. Like folding a paper fan. Under the strategy of the Annam Protectorate, the number of White Stone Legion soldiers who were pinned down and unable to escape increased from 10,000 to 20,000, 20,000 to 30,000, and finally reached more than 40,000. As long as the White Stone Legion dared to not resist and blindly escape, then these people would all be killed, and they would die very quickly. Selling your back to the enemy, there was no faster way to die than this. However, if the White Stone Legion turned around to resist, they would once again fall into Wang Chong's rhythm of, when the enemy advances, I retreat. When the enemy retreats, I advance. When the enemy attacks, I defend. When the enemy defends, I attack. This was another kind of slow death. And in the end, the number of casualties would only increase. Congratulations to user for killing 30,000 soldiers of the Mengshizhao army. The Stone of Destiny's familiar voice once more resounded in his mind. As Wang Chong looked down the mountain, a fierce light flitted through his eyes. We'll die if we advance, and we'll die if we retreat. Now it's up to you to choose. As this thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind, he stood motionless on the summit, his face cold and aloof. It was like he was standing in a different dimension. The choice was now in the hands of the Mengshizhao Yusang army. Jiao Sero, it's your turn. At the base of the mountain, Daluan Ruozhen suddenly spoke in Uzan. This, Jiao Sero hesitated for a moment and subconsciously turned his head to look at General Huashu Wuzong. Although the highest leader of the Uzan Gari royal lineage was Prime Minister Daluan Ruozhen, the real military commander was General Huashu Wuzong. Moreover, although everyone knew that the Prime Minister was very intelligent, that was only in terms of strategy. In terms of actual military strategy and command, the Prime Minister was actually not that experienced. Didn't you hear what the Prime Minister said? Go. Huashu Wuzong said lightly and waved his hand, his face expressionless. Yes, I'll go now. Jiao Sero made up his mind. He quickly bowed and turned to leave. Wait! Break through from the northeast corner. Huashu Wuzong suddenly stopped Jiao Sero. Yes, my lord. Jiao Sero was greatly encouraged and his footsteps quickened. The Prime Minister is worried about Mengshizhao? Once Jiao Sero had left, Huashu Wuzong suddenly turned to Daluan Ruozhen, still speaking in Uzan, as if no one else was present. Only he knew that what Daluan Ruozhen had said just now was not an order, but a statement of his attitude. An attitude that indicated that the Uzan alliance should take action. Yes, Daluan Ruozhen nodded, a hint of worry in his eyes. That brat is probably even more formidable than we imagined. If Mengshizhao's forces are defeated too badly and suffer too many casualties, it will be disadvantageous to us. Morale is a very subtle thing. In addition, although Jelifeng hasn't said anything, if we ignore him, he will probably hold a grudge against us in the future. This won't be very good for the Mengshi Yusang alliance. After all, we will need their help in many areas in the future. Since that's the case, let's just make our move. Huashu Wuzong indifferently said, his face unperturbed. Huashu, you've been in the army for much longer than I have. I heard that before you were made a general, you served under the command of the White Buddha Great General. Other than Zhangqiu Jianxiong, you should have interacted with other generals of the Central Plains. Tell me the truth. Have you ever seen such a strange way of fighting before? Wang Chong's tactics were extremely bizarre. They were repeated over and over again, like maggots in the bone. You retreated and I advanced, you advanced and I retreated. His every move could be clearly seen by those outside. Even the White Stone Legion knew what he would do next, but they still fell for his tricks. Most frightening of all was that Duan Wuji's White Stone Legion could not retreat even if they wanted to. If Uzin's men did not intervene, the White Stone Legion would not have suffered 40 or 50,000 casualties, but a complete wipeout. Most people probably didn't realize this, not even Zhou Yuofeng. No. A ripple finally appeared on Huoshu Wuzong's calm face, followed by a long silence. After being locked in a stalemate with the tiger of the Tang dynasty, Zhangqiu Jinxiong, for decades, Huoshu Wuzong was already in existence in the southwest that could shake 3 empires. And Dalawan Ruozen's intelligence was as deep as the sea, an existence that all sides, including Zhangqiu Jinxiong, feared. Chapter 570. Damn it! At the northeast corner of the mountain, crowds were surging. Jiao Sero was leading an army of Uzin cavalry as he looked up at the densely packed steel walls that resembled fish scales. He felt his scalp going numb. This brat is completely targeting our Uzin. The infantrymen of Mengshi Zhao like Duan Wuji might not be able to feel it, but as the commander of the cavalry, Jiao Sero could tell that Wang Chong's defenses were completely targeted at Uzin. Where did this brat come from? This was the 3rd time Jiao Sero was about to fight with Wang Chong. The first time was when they were pursuing Wang Yan, and part of the Annam Protectorate. The second time was when they were about to rendezvous with General Huoshu Wuzong. This was the 3rd time. In the history of Mengshi Zhao, there had been some powerful opponents. For example, Geshu Han of the Longxi region of the Tang dynasty was an opponent that the Uzin was extremely wary of. But to be honest, after 2 consecutive defeats, Jiao Sero would have had the urge to turn tail and run when he saw the densely packed steel walls at the top of the mountain. If it wasn't for the general's order, he would have turned tail and run. This mountain was simply hell for a cavalry. Jiao Sero even suspected that the reason why the general and the prime minister allowed Mengshi Zhao to take the lead was not as simple as making use of them. This damnable kid. If I get my hands on him, I'll definitely tear him to pieces. Giaciluo fiercely raised his head and stared at that thin and weak figure on the distant summit. That figure, which didn't look very tall or burly, seemed to contain a power that made everyone tremble in fear. Even though everyone else was deceived, Jiao Sero knew that the one commanding this battle, including the battle with Duan Wuji, wasn't any other general of the Tang dynasty. It wasn't Wang Yan, Xianyu Zhongtong, or Zhao Wujiang. It was the mysterious young man on the mountain peak. The general's judgment is correct. Among the 4 areas on the mountain peak, only the northeast corner is the easiest to break through. Jiao Sero looked up at the mountain peak and thought. The entire mountain peak was filled with the soldiers of the White Stone Legion, who were attracted by the Annam Protectorate. Of course, the northeast corner was the weakest and the easiest path for Uzin's army. Of course, there was actually a better path on the mountain. However, Giaciluo glanced at the nearby passage, that was 10 some zhang wide, his gaze sweeping over the hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of caltrops of various sizes, and he felt a chill in his heart. This was a path of death for cavalrymen. No cavalryman could step on the caltrops that were as big as millstones and as small as dates to charge up the mountain. Even if they were to clear them one by one, it would take at least several months to clear out such a large number of caltrops. Not to mention, Wang Chong had arranged groups of ballistae and sharpshooters at the end of the path. The arrows were all aimed at the foot of the mountain. Anyone who appeared on this path would be sending themselves to the feet of the god of death. Crack, crack. Veins popped out on his forehead, but Jiao Sero soon calmed down. Everyone listen up. Follow me immediately. Jiao Sero suddenly swung the halberd in his hand, In the next moment, Nei's warhorse neighed. Jiao Sero and his horse became one, and suddenly leaped up the mountain. Behind him, the black and red cloak fluttered in the air and flashed fiercely. Then, it quickly disappeared in the direction of the mountain. Hiya! Behind Jiao Sero, tens of thousands of Uzun soldiers followed Jiao Sero like a school of carps in the river. They charged up the mountain from the foot of the mountain. All the cavalrymen were skilled with bows and horses. They passed through the steel walls, as if there was no one there, and charged toward the Annam Protectorate. Kid, if you think these iron lumps can stop us, then you are gravely mistaken. In this world, there is nothing that can completely stop us, the Uzun. Jiao Sero clenched his teeth. His body leaned against the back of the tall and strong Highland steed, and he secretly swore in his heart. The cavalrymen of the grassland were skilled in horsemanship since they were young. The steel walls that Wang Chong set up on the surface of the mountain could indeed obstruct them, but it was impossible for them to completely stop the Uzun. Everyone follow up. Let us kill the Tang people and defeat them. Jiao Sero raised the halberd in his hand and shouted loudly. Roar! Behind him, the cavalrymen of the Uzun army responded with a thunderous roar. Looking down from the sky, one could see huge greenish-black dragons moving back and forth along the gaps of the steel walls, twisting and turning, as if they were migrating at the bottom of a river. Since it was impossible to charge in a straight line, the cavalrymen would charge in a roundabout way. This was the method that Jiao Sero thought of to break through the steel walls, set up by Wang Chong. If they took the bait, on the top of the mountain, Wang Chong kept his eyes and ears open. When he saw Jiao Sero and the Uzun army charging in a roundabout way from the northeast corner, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. They really broke through from the northeast corner. Huashu Wuzong, you have indeed read many military books from the Central Plains. Wang Chong sneered in his heart. There had long been rumors that Huashu Wuzong had obtained many military books from Daluan Ruozhen. Therefore, he knew the military styles of the generals of the Central Plains like the back of his hand, and could easily defeat them. However, since Huashu Wuzong had always commanded pure cavalrymen, which was completely different from the Central Plains, which was mainly infantrymen, there was no way to verify this. However, Wang Chong had only casually tested it, and he immediately found out that Huashu Wuzong had not only read the military books from the Central Plains, but also that it was indeed true. There was no way the rumors were false. Using the military books from the Central Plains to deal with the generals of the Central Plains, Huashu Wuzong, how dare you think of something like this? Jiao Sero, since you're here, don't even think about leaving. I've prepared a great gift for you. If Jiao Sero saw Wang Chong's expression at this moment, he would definitely be terrified. General Luo, here. As Wang Chong's figure appeared, a dark-skinned general wearing black armor and a black cloak walked out from behind Wang Chong. He had a dignified and cold expression, and he was filled with an iron will. Young master, do you have any orders for me to transfer? I'm willing to go at any time. That general's face was pitch black, and it looked like it was cast in silver. His every movement revealed a powerful will, and he was completely different from the other generals. Luoji, nicknamed Iron Spear Luo, was one of the high-ranking generals of the Annam Protectorate, and his standing wasn't beneath that of Zhao Wujiang. However, unlike Zhao Wujiang, who was close to Xin Yu Zhongtong, Luoji had never been on good terms with Xin Yu Zhongtong. Even though they both served under Zhangqiu Jianxiong, Luoji had never gotten along with Xin Yu Zhongtong. It wasn't just because Luoji was loyal to Zhangqiu Jianxiong. More importantly, Luoji had always believed that only Zhangqiu Jianxiong was qualified to assume the position of Annam Protector General. Even though Xin Yu Zhongtong was the candidate appointed by Zhangqiu Jianxiong before he was appointed, he wasn't capable enough to assume the position. The southwest bordered Mengxi Zhao and Uzun, and it was a place where three empires intersected. The situation was complicated, and it wasn't inferior to that of the western regions or Annong. Without a sufficiently powerful individual to guard the area, it was easy for problems to arise. And the subsequent developments had confirmed Luoji's conjecture. When Lion City was breaking out of the encirclement, Luoji immediately split with Xinyu Zhongtong and chose to lead a portion of the Annam Protectorate's army to follow Wang Yan. In Luoji's view, at least in terms of capability, the Wang clan's father and son were much more open-minded than Xinyu Zhongtong. At the very least, they had always known what to do in this war. They wouldn't be like Xinyu Zhongtong, leading the army into danger. He's indeed a valiant general. Wang Chong's eyes were sharp, and when he saw Luoji walking out from the back, he nodded his head in approval. The reason why he chose Luoji was very simple. Luoji was adept at using a spear, and his attacks were extremely powerful. On the summit last time, Wang Chong had realized that when his father had arrived with the Annan Protectorate army officers, Jia Siluo had feared no one except the commander of the Annan Protectorate army, Luo Ji, who had been the last to arrive. Wang Chong had realized that Jia Siluo was extremely apprehensive of him. During the battle, he almost completely avoided Luoji. Not long after Luoji arrived, he hurriedly left. When Wang Chong saw this scene, he sharply noticed that Jiao Sero's Zifadon had an extremely strong defense, but Luoji's terrifying spear skills were precisely the bane of his Zifadon. This was also one of the main reasons why Jiao Sero avoided him. However, Jiao Sero, it won't be so easy for you to leave this time. The corner of Wang Chong's mouth revealed a trace of a cold smile. Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chen Xiong Li Ji Fong Tang Zhou Han. Yes, sir. Su Shiping Su Anduan. Yes, sir. Go with General Luo. You know what to do, right? Yes, sir. Wang Chong waved his sleeves, and the 6 Black Dragon Gang elites that Li Sai had sent along with Su Shiping and Su Anduan immediately left to carry out the order. Luoji's strength was enough to pose a great threat to Jiao Sero, but it was far from fatal. These 6 Black Dragon Gang elites, Su Shiping and Su Anduan, were the best assistants that Wang Chong had specially prepared for Luoji. General Luo, wait a moment. Just as Luoji was about to descend the mountain, Wang Chong pondered for a moment, and suddenly took out a spear barrel from his waist. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed it over. If we want to deal with Jiao Sero, we can't do without this. Take it. Even with Luoji's maturity and composure, he couldn't help but be moved by the retractable spear barrel. More importantly, the spear Wang Chong had given him was definitely no ordinary spear. There was only one thing that Luoji could think of. Wuxi's steel weapon. Thank you, Gongzi. Luo Ji turned around. Even though his heart was in turmoil, his face remained calm and steady, without much of an expression on it. Go. Wang Chong smiled and didn't say anything else. This retractable spear barrel was a replica of Martianus Yi's weapon. In truth, the material used to forge the spear barrel wasn't too high. It was made out of top-notch superior steel, mixed with the crushed metal from overseas, and inscribed with a large number of toughening inscriptions. The true crux of the spear was the spearhead. There was simply too little Wuxi steel in stock. That was why Wang Chong thought of crafting a spearhead made of Wuxi steel to conserve materials. Hung Long Long. Regardless of what Wang Chong was thinking, after obtaining the Wuxi steel spear from Wang Chong, Luoji was like a tiger that had grown wings. Riding on a massive black steed, he kicked up a cloud of dust and charged down the mountain toward Jiao Sero. Chapter 571. When Jiao Sero led tens of thousands of Uzun iron cavalry up the hill, it immediately caused a huge impact on the enemies fighting on the hill. Nay! The war horse galloped. An Uzun soldier became one with his horse and rushed up the hill. The heavy hooves of the horse slammed into the shield of an Annam Protectorate soldier. Ah! Amidst the screams, the huge force sent the Annam Protectorate soldier flying high into the air. Bang 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 bang. One after another, Uzun iron cavalry rushed up the hill. Every time an Uzun iron cavalry charged up the hill, a Tang dynasty soldier would be sent flying. As the most powerful army on the mainland, the Uzun iron cavalry instantly displayed a combat strength that far surpassed that of the White Stone Legion. Even though their speed was greatly reduced due to the terrain and the steel walls, the power displayed by the Uzun iron cavalry still surpassed that of Mengshi Zhao. Those who block me shall die. Following an earth-shattering tiger roar, the The Zifidon Jiao Sero of the 5 tiger generals also became one with his horse and charged into the battle on the hill. Rumble, a powerful shockwave spread out in all directions with Jiao Sero as the center. All the Annam Protectorate soldiers, horses, mud, rocks, and gravel were sent flying by Jiao Sero. Even some of the Whitestone Legion soldiers who couldn't dodge in time were sent flying by Jiao Sero. Clang! Even a few pieces of steel walls that weighed thousands of kilograms and were pieced together by countless modules were uprooted by Jiao Sero and sent flying. The heavy steel walls came crashing down. Bang, 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 a large number of Annam Protectorate soldiers fell. All of you die. The helmet on Giasiluo's head exploded, sending his disheveled hair flying through the air. With a leap, he dismounted from his horse and entered the Annam Protectorate's battlefront. Boom! A huge, solid halo of thorns shook the crowd. Amidst the blood-curdling screams, the Annam Protectorate warriors were sent flying like ragdolls. Although these experienced Tang Dynasty elites had gone through many trials and tribulations, they were still insignificant in front of a top-notch general like Jiao Sero. Boom, boom, boom. Jiao Sero charged left and right, but no one was a match for it. A captain of the Tang Dynasty rushed forward and tried to stop him. However, when he was still 30 feet away, he was sent flying by Jiao Sero's vigorous energy. While he was still in midair, his chest had already caved in. He was breathing more in than out. Ha ha, brat, what kind of bullshit tactic is that? It's nothing in the face of absolute power. You're dead meat today. Jiao Sero seemed to have gone mad as he shouted in the Uzun language. He treated the Annam Protectorate before him as an incarnation of Wang Chong. All of the Annam Protectorate were treated as Wang Chong, becoming his target to vent his anger on. Bang, bang, bang. Jiao Sero was like a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus, killing wherever he went. Behind him, the morale of the Uzun soldiers was greatly boosted. Tens of thousands of Uzun cavalry followed behind him, slaughtering the Annam Protectorate soldiers in front of them. Ha ha ha, so the Tang people are nothing more than this. Last time, they only took advantage of the storm and the darkness. These bastards don't dare to fight us head-on. Well said, ha ha ha. Kill them all. That all of the Uzun soldiers regained their spirits. This was especially so for those who followed Jiao Sero and experienced 2 major defeats. Before this battle, everyone had a deep shadow in their hearts. But now everything was gone. Kill. The addition of the Uzun soldiers completely changed the course of this battle. It also changed the balance of power between the Whitestone Legion and the Annam Protectorate. In the entire northeast corner, wherever the Uzun soldiers were, the Annam Protectorate's strategy was almost completely disrupted. Feeling the momentum of the Uzun soldiers, the Mengshi Zhao soldiers in other directions were also greatly energized. Everyone, don't be afraid. The Uzun soldiers are making their move. Block them. The Annam Protectorate is not invincible. The Uzun soldiers are their nemesis. Everyone, do your best. The Tang Dynasty is about to lose. They are no match for us. All the Whitestone Legion soldiers had originally been afraid and only thought about fleeing, but at this moment their morale soared, and they began to resist the Tang Dynasty and the Annam Protectorate with all their might. For a moment, the Annam Protectorate was unable to do anything to them. The situation was rapidly turning for the worse, and with the Mengshi, Yusang forces working together, the situation was extremely disadvantageous to the Tang Dynasty. On the other side, a smile appeared on Zhao Wujiang's face. It really is as young master said. The Uzun still can't hold back. As Zhao Wujiang listened to the fighting on the other side of the mountain, a smile appeared on his lips. Besides intercepting Duan Wuji, he had also received another order for this attack. Everything was going exactly as Wang Chong had predicted. Even the timing of the Uzun soldiers' attack was exactly the same. Jiao Sero, this time, you won't be able to go back. Sheathing his blood-colored saber, Zhao Wujiang smiled as he pulled on the reins of his horse. Ignoring the battle before him, he turned his horse around and rode toward Jiao Sero's position in the northeast corner. Jiao Sero, I've come to deal with you. This shout was like a great bell, resounding through the clouds and audible even from several li away. You overestimate yourself. A cold snort came from the northeast corner. At almost the same time, Jiao Sero led his army and charged in Zhao Wujiang's direction. Although Huoshi Wuzong had intended for him to break through from the northeast corner, that was only because the White Stone Legion had the fewest soldiers there. But that was only because the White Stone Legion had the fewest soldiers there. And it was also the best place for Uzun's cavalry to rush to the top of the mountain. But in Jiao Sero's heart, the most important thing was to defeat the White Stone Legion's commander-in-chief, Duan Wuji, Zhao Wujiang. What's the point of defeating the weak? Only by defeating the strong can I prove my worth. This had always been the principle and deep belief of Jiao Sero, the Zifidon. Bang! The divine horse galloped for more than 700 feet. The crowd on the top of the mountain was densely packed. In the end, Zhao Wujiang felt that the horse was too slow. He leaped up from the horse's back and with a flash, landed on a steel wall more than 10 feet high. He leaped into the air, and when he reappeared, he was already on top of another steel city wall that was over 100 feet away. Beneath Zhao Wujiang's feet was a thick halo of thorns, sparkling endlessly. It made the armored Zhao Wujiang look like a god, and he could be seen clearly even from several li away. This dazzling light immediately attracted the attention of the crowd on the summit. Even Huoshi Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen couldn't help but look over. As one of the high-ranking generals of the Annam Protectorate, Zhao Wujiang had an illustrious reputation in the southwest. There was practically no one who did not know of him. Even the illustrious king of Mengxi Pavilion, Jelifeng, and Crown Prince Fenjie had heard of his exploits. It's Zhao Wujiang. Crown Prince Fenjie's eyes widened. In Mengxi Zhao, Zhao Wujiang was absolutely a special existence. After all, he had been a friendly envoy of the Tang dynasty to Mengxi Zhao, and he was inextricably linked to the establishment of the White Stone Legion. Before Mengxi Zhao and the Tang dynasty had fought, even in the 6th Zhao of Arai, Zhao Wujiang had an extremely high reputation. The people of Mengxi Zhao had a very complicated relationship with Zhao Wujiang. Thus, even though Zhao Wujiang had defeated Duan Wuji, the people of Mengxi Zhao did not feel too much hatred for him. But the War of the Southwest was of great importance, and Mengxi Zhao simply could not afford to lose. Imperial Father, I will lead the troops. Fenjie raised his brow, and immediately prepared to go. Jelifeng was moved, but she glanced at Daluan Ruozhen and Huoshi Wuzong, and immediately restrained herself. Wait a moment. Now is not the time for us to act. If we interfere now, we will make Huoshi Wuzong and the others unhappy. And it is time for the Mengxi Zhao, Yusang alliance to put in some effort. The first part was still in Mengxi Zhao, but the second part was spoken in a dialect that very few people in the 6th Zhao of Arai could understand. But Imperial Father, if Jiao Sero acts, the Tang dynasty will probably also send a general. Before, when Duan Wuji acted, didn't they send Zhao Wujiang? Fenjie froze for a moment, and then switched to a dialect that very few people could understand. That's not something for us to worry about. As long as Wang Yan or Xinyu Zhongtong doesn't act, Jiao Sero will be able to escape unscathed. Right now, Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong are both at the summit. Don't you see that Huoshi Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen are standing there, unmoving? Fenjie was startled and subconsciously glanced at them. As expected, Huoshi Wuzong and Daluan Ruozhen were motionless, their expressions calm and relaxed. Yes, Imperial Father. Fenjie's tensed muscles slowly relaxed, and then immediately began to relax. Bang! Halfway up the mountain, a blazing white flame blazed. Jiao Sero had finally activated his clone, and the enormous halo of thorns around his body suddenly turned and retracted into his body. In the next moment, Jiao Sero had disappeared, replaced by a massive Zifidon that was rapidly charging over the steel walls. Finally, boom! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. As countless people watched, Zhao Wujiang and Jiao Sero leapt high into the air from two steel walls that were separated by Tinsum Zhang. Stellar energy blazed around their bodies, and they were like two meteors, one red and one white, that crashed into each other several dozen zhang in the air. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, two completely different types of stellar energy fiercely collided in the air. In that instant, the two of them simultaneously unleashed over 100 attacks. Just when everyone on both sides was staring at the sky, Zhao Wujiang suddenly screamed as the sword-fanged beast Giasilio's claw struck him in the chest and sent him flying. Boom! Dust flew into the air as the ground where Zhao Wujiang had landed cracked open. General. Chapter 572. What Zhao Wujiang? He's just S.O. Jiao Sero couldn't help but laugh after sending Zhao Wujiang flying with one claw strike. Zhao Wujiang was quite famous in the southwest, just based on his relationship with Duan Wuji and the White Stone Legion. Zhao Wujiang was one of the top figures in the southwest. To be able to send Zhao Wujiang, a famous figure of the Tang dynasty, flying with one palm strike was undoubtedly a great honor for Jiao Sero. If I kill Zhao Wujiang, I'll have killed 12 famous generals of the Tang dynasty. Giasilio heartily laughed. Zhao Wujiang's war halo was obviously not as good as his Zifidon's halo. At least his attack couldn't break through Jiao Sero's clone. As one of the supreme techniques of the Great Snow Mountain Holy Temple, unless Giasilio encountered someone on the level of Wang Yan or Xinyu Zhongtong, or was surrounded by many powerful experts, very few people would be able to break through his powerful defense. Zhao Wujiang, don't even think about leaving. The Zifidon used all 4 of its claws and leaped high on the modular steel wall, pouncing directly at the place where Zhao Wujiang had fallen. Go! Zhao Wujiang's reaction was faster than Jiao Sero's. Before Jiao Sero could pounce, a blood-red light shot into the sky from the rolling dust, pouncing toward the mountain. You can't escape. Jiao Sero laughed loudly. His eyes narrowed, and a strong killing intent shot out from his pupils. Zhao Wujiang was still very far from the top of the mountain. Even if Wang Yan, Xinyu Zhongtong, or other generals of the Tang dynasty came to help, it would still take some time. Now is the best time to kill you. The killing intent in Jiao Sero's heart burned. Under normal circumstances, it would be very difficult to kill a person like Zhao Wujiang. Now that he was injured, his speed of escape was not fast at all. Moreover, this was the best opportunity to kill him. Die! Jiao Sero shook its claws. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The Annam Protectorate warriors of the Tang dynasty were sent flying in all directions. Protect the general. The surroundings were in chaos, and the soldiers rushed over in a frenzy. Get out of my way! Jiao Sero's earth energy exploded. His entire person was like a prehistoric giant beast. That vigorous earth energy was condensed into a solid substance. The thorny halo that was as sharp as a blade vibrated crazily. Almost no one could get within 3 feet of him. Bang! Giasilio pressed his 4 claws against the ground as he chased after Zhao Wujiang. Not good. Jiao Sero is being impulsive. At the base of the mountain, Fenjie couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw Jiao Sero charge into the Annam Protectorate's ranks by himself. Don't chase a cornered enemy was not only suitable for bandits, but also on the battlefield. Jiao Sero didn't even have a single guard by his side, and yet he wanted to chase after Zhao Wujiang. This was a great taboo. This guy doesn't understand the art of war. I have to get him back. Fenjie was extremely anxious. Unlike the other generals of the Uzan, Fenjie did not have a good impression of the other Uzan generals. On the contrary, he got along very well with Jiao Sero. Together, the two of them had killed no small number of high-ranking generals of the Tang dynasty's Annam Protectorate. On the battlefield against the Tang dynasty, their cooperation complemented each other. Wait a moment. Jelifeng called out to Fenjie. His expression was solemn as he stared in the direction of the mountain. Look over there. Don't you see anything? What? Fenjie's eyes focused, a hint of astonishment flashing through his face. You underestimate Jiao Sero too much. If he really didn't have any intelligence, do you think he could have reached his current position? And he's ranked second among the 5 tiger generals. Look carefully at those Tang dynasty soldiers around him. Do you really not see anything? Imperial father, you mean? Fenjie's pupils constricted as he finally realized something. Those soldiers are charging forward to protect Zhao Wujiang with their lives. If there was an ambush, it wouldn't be like this. There are only two possibilities in this situation. The first is that there was no ambush at all. Jiao Sero saw this, which is why he dared to chase after Zhao Wujiang. The second is that there really was an ambush, but only Zhao Wujiang knew about it. No one else knew. This. Fenjie was dumbfounded. However, Jia Siluo was only recently transferred to this position, and Zhao Wujiang only appeared because of Duan Wuji. If it was the second possibility, then Zhao Wujiang would have had to have predicted that Jiao Sero would appear when he was dealing with Duan Wuji, and he would have been prepared to deliberately injure himself. But that would be too inconceivable. So I'm leaning toward the first possibility. Don't you see that Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Wuzong are also hesitating? Jelifeng said. Fenjie turned his head and saw that Huashu Wuzong had a hint of hesitation on his face. It was clear that he was thinking the same thing. As expected, Fenjie's brow quickly relaxed. Jelifeng's eyes and ears were on all sides. Fenjie's expression had long ago fallen into her eyes, and she inwardly nodded in approval. Fenjie was the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao, and also the son he favored the most. His martial prowess was outstanding, and he had received the orthodox education of the Tang people in the capital of the Tang dynasty. He had met the holy emperor of the Tang dynasty, studied the art of war, and had some understanding of the politics of the court. At his age, there were far too few people who could match him, but the crux of the matter was that he was too young, lacked experience, and lacked tempering. He could see through many things, but he didn't see through them enough. For example, he knew that he couldn't charge in alone and penetrate too deeply into the enemy ranks, but he didn't notice the reactions of the surrounding Tang dynasty soldiers. Given Fenjie's abilities, this shouldn't have been the case, but he was too concerned and confused, lacking a bit of maturity and steadiness. This was the disadvantage of not being old and not having enough experience. That fellow Jiao Sero might really be able to kill Zhao Wujiang. Jelifeng muttered to herself as she gazed up at the mountain. The martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple were completely different from those of the Central Plains, and even more so from those of Mengshi Zhao. Zhao Wujiang might be able to defeat Duan Wuji, but if he ran into the even more formidable Jelifeng, he really might suffer a crushing defeat. But even so, we can't just ignore this matter. Jai, make preparations. If the situation doesn't look good, go and support Jelifeng. Yes, Imperial Father. Fenjie immediately left to carry out the order. Wait a moment. Don't go too quickly, lest Uzun's people become unhappy. Jelifeng said. Uzun's people had acted in order to save Mengshi Zhao. If Mengshi Zhao's people acted now, it would inevitably cause Uzun's people to feel embarrassed. It would be fine if they helped, but if they didn't, it would instead cause others to feel that they had acted superfluously and would become unhappy. This child understands. Fenjie nodded and left to carry out the order. On the other side, Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Wuzong were also conversing in Uzun's language. Fenjie left. Daluan Ruozhen's first words were, "I saw him." Huashu Wuzong nodded, his face expressionless. Their gazes were fixed on the mountain, and they didn't even turn their heads in the direction of Jelifeng and Fenjie, but their movements couldn't be hidden from them. Mengshi Zhao's crown prince seems to have a very favorable impression of Jiao Sero. Daluan Ruozhen said. That's normal. Jiao Sero is rough on the outside but delicate on the inside, so it's normal for Fenjie to act this way. Huashu Wuzong indifferently said. If Fenjie could hear their conversation, he would assuredly be shocked, because the two were clearly talking about him. But we should also make some preparations. If Jelifeng takes action, the Tang dynasty can't just sit back and do nothing. Daluan Ruozhen lightly waved his fan. Understood. I've already made the arrangements. After saying this, both Daluan Ruozhen and Huashu Wuzong fell silent, no one saying anything else. On the summit, while Daluan Ruozhen, Huashu Wuzong, Jelifeng, Fenjie, and the others were still discussing, the battlefield on the summit was rapidly changing. Jiao Sero and Zhao Wujiang's pursuit had already undergone a drastic change. Bang! Apparently because Jia Siluo had been in too much of a hurry, Zhao Wujiang had stumbled in his panic and almost tripped. This delay had immediately become a fatal opening. A good chance. Jiao Sero's eyes brightened when he saw this scene. How could he let go of such a chance? Boom! Jiao Sero's dantian shook, exploding with an earth-shaking metallic clatter that caused the earth beneath his feet to shake. Borrowing the rebounding force of this stomp, Jiao Sero's speed suddenly skyrocketed. In the blink of an eye, he chased after Zhao Wujiang at the speed of lightning. In midair, he pressed down on Zhao Wujiang's head like a mountain. Ferocious beast stomp. Jiao Sero's entire body's strength condensed into one, emitting an ancient bestial roar in the air. A huge ferocious beast's claw the size of a small mountain appeared in the air and pounced at Zhao Wujiang. Ha ha ha, the 12th. Jiao Sero laughed heartily. Zhao Wujiang at his peak was not his match, not to mention now that he was injured. Ha ha, good. Just when Jia Silua was about to accelerate and catch up, the eyes of Zhao Wujiang, who had been stumbling around in a panic, suddenly shone with a light even more dazzling than the sun. Jiao Sero, you've been tricked. Boom! A blood-red flame rose into the sky. In Jiao Sero's eyes, the injured Zhao Wujiang suddenly turned his palm over and pressed it under his body. In an instant, he and his horse became one. He exerted all his strength and pounced at Jiao Sero in the air at the speed of lightning. Almost at the same time, a few loud bangs came from Jiao Sero's ears. In Jiao Sero's perception, a few unusually powerful figures suddenly appeared among the vast Tang Dynasty's soldiers. He did not know how long they had been lurking there. It was only at this moment when he followed Zhao Wujiang into the ambush that they launched the ambush. Jiao Sero, give me your life. Boom! In the deafening roar, a fierce chi soared into the sky. That chi was extremely terrifying. It was so sharp that it seemed to tear the sky apart. Iron Spear Luo. Jiao Sero's heart turned cold. A thought flashed across his mind. In the entire Annam Protectorate, only the Iron Spear Invincible Luoji could emit such a terrifying chi. I've been ambushed. Just as this thought flashed across his mind from all directions, Zhao Wujiang Luoji, Su Shiping Suanduan, as well as Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, Chen Xiong, Li Ji Fangtang and Zhou Han, the 6 elites of the Black Dragon Gang, attacked at the same time. The 10 of them had surrounded Jia Siluo, cutting off all his paths of retreat. Although Zhao Wujiang and Luoji were the strongest among the 10, the real killer move was not Zhao Wujiang or Luoji. It was Su Shiping Suanduan, as well as Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chen Xiong, Li Ji Fangtang and Zhou Han. Looking down from the sky, the 8 people's bodies shone brightly. Everyone's stellar chi seemed to fuse into one, and within the stellar chi, the illusion of a black scythe could be vaguely seen. Chapter 573. There were many joint offensive formations in this world, especially in the military. Be it the Tang Dynasty, the Uzan, or the Mengshi Zhao, they all had such joint offensive formations, be it in the open or in the dark. By gathering the strength of many weaklings, and using the power of the formation, one could challenge, or even kill a stronger opponent. However, this kind of joint offensive formation wasn't easy to cultivate. It required great teamwork in teamwork. Thus, up until now, joint offensive formations had only been circulating in a small circle. It was only after the otherworldly invaders appeared that joint offensive formations became widespread. All the martial artists on the continent, be it the Tang Dynasty, the Uzan, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganate, or even the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak Spazinu, realized that their attacks weren't very effective against the otherworldly beings. All of the attacks on them, or the otherworldly invaders, were only half the effect. Thus, everyone had no choice but to think of other methods. It was at that time that small-scale joint offensive formations suddenly became widespread. Be it the Tang Dynasty of the Central Plains, or the surrounding foreign countries, all of the empires and civilizations focused a large amount of manpower and resources on researching and developing joint offensive formations. A large number of formation combination techniques were invented at that time. Within a short period of time, this kind of small-scale formation combination technique had reached its peak, and the Death Sickle was one of the most outstanding of them all. Even though time was short, and Su Shiping, Suanduan, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chen Xiong, Li Ji Feng Tang, and Johan hadn't undergone the strict training of Death God. Yet, the 8 of them were more than enough to deal with the Jiao Sero from the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Boom! Zhao Wujiang and Luoji worked together with Su Shiping, Su Onduan, and the others in their Death God Scythe joint offensive formation. In the blink of an eye, the 10 of them had surrounded the enemy. Even if Jiao Sero was prepared, it was already too late. The astral wind was strong, and the chi of the 11 people clashed fiercely in the void. With a shrill scream, Jiao Sero's huge Zifodon incarnation was forcefully destroyed. The chi dissipated, and Jiao Sero directly exploded from the form of a Zifodon into his human form. Puff! Blood splattered everywhere, and a dark red spear tip that was dripping with blood pierced into Jiao Sero's chest. The spear missed his heart by a hair's breadth, piercing through his internal organs and coming out from his back. Luoji, invincible Luoji. In the entire Annam Protectorate, only Luoji Iron Spear could execute such a powerful spear technique that completely ignored Jiao Sero's powerful physical body and astral energy protection. Wang Chang's Wuxia Steel Spear, combined with Luoji Iron Spear's terrifying spear technique, directly pierced through Jiao Sero's Danzhong acupoint, tearing apart his internal organs. What was even more frightening was that Luoji Iron Spear's extremely condensed and powerful astral energy had already entered Jiao Sero's body when the spear pierced through, blasting into his limbs, bones, and meridians. Jiao Sero! General! Waves of roars came from all directions. From afar, the eyes of many Uzun warriors instantly turned red. Suddenly, too suddenly, Jiao Sero had clearly been the one in pursuit, and he had been incomparably valiant, unstoppable in his path, killing gods and Buddhas alike. And just when it seemed like he was about to take Zhao Wujiang's life, the situation had suddenly reversed. Jiao Sero had gone from being the one in pursuit to the one being chased and ambushed. From the moment he leaped from the ambush to the moment he leaped into the air, before many people could even react, Luoji's invincible spear art had already pierced through Jiao Sero's Danzhong acupoint, killing him in a single blow. At the base of the mountain, the Mengshi, Yusang commanders felt like their hearts were about to stop. An ambush. From start to finish, this had been an ambush. Zhao Wujiang's injury and defeat had all been an act, all for the sake of drawing Jiao Sero into the trap. Damn it! We've been tricked. Dalawan Ruozen's pupils contracted, and the fan in his hand suddenly stopped moving. He raised his head and looked at the skinny young figure at the top of the mountain. Although Iron Spear Luo was famous for his spear arts, he was not known for his intelligence. Zhao Wujiang would never have expected that the one to appear after a few rounds of intense battle would be Jiao Sero. From Duan Wuji to Jiao Sero, to calculate from such a long time to Jiao Sero, Dalawan Ruozen could only think of one person. That young Tang dynasty youth, Wang Chong. I've been tricked by him. Dalawan Ruozen's robes fluttered, and his right hand held onto the feather fan. This was the first time he had lost his balance. In this world, there were very few things that could make him lose his balance, but this was definitely one of them. Dalawan Ruozen's loss of balance was definitely not because of Jiao Sero. Jiao Sero was only a trigger. The real reason was that Dalawan Ruozen felt that he had met a real opponent. Jiao Sero was sent out by Huashu Wuzong at the last minute, from the White Stone Legion's attack, to Duan Wuji's appearance, and then to Jiao Sero's attack. To be able to think of scheming against Jiao Sero in such a long time span, while using Zhao Wujiang, this was definitely not something that an ordinary person could do. Dalawan Ruozen did not understand military affairs, but this time, it had nothing to do with military affairs. Dalawan Ruozen felt that he had encountered an opponent that was exactly the same as him. Even if the opponent was not at the same level, they were definitely at the same level of intelligence. This brat, I can't let him live any longer. Dalawan Ruozen's pupils constricted, and his heart blazed with killing intent. He had originally been thinking that, if possible, he would take this brat's life and seize his knowledge of the art of war. But now Dalawan Ruozen had changed his mind. An opponent of this level could not be allowed to live. He had to be eliminated as quickly as possible. Cack-lack. A series of cracking noises came from the side. Huashu Wuzong remained unmoved, his stalwart body standing like a mountain. But his tightly clenched fists and his ashen face clearly betrayed what he was feeling. Although the offensive power of Jiao Sero's Zifadon was somewhat inferior to that of Longkimba, the leader of the 5 tiger generals, its body was tough, its defenses formidable, and its life-preserving methods formidable. Not even Longkimba could compare to it. The Zifadon was a supreme defensive art of the Great Snow Mountain Temple, and Jiao Sero had chosen a completely different path from Longkimba. It was precisely for this reason that neither Daluan Ruozan nor Huashu Wuzong had been very worried when Jiao Sero had pursued Zhao Wujiang. But the scene before him was not what Huashu Wuzong had expected. Order Huoba Guyuan to prepare to attack. Yes, my lord. Putting aside the movements at the base of the mountain, Jiao Sero's situation had left everyone dumbfounded. As Luoji's spear pierced through Jiao Sero, and the group began to plummet, Jiao Sero's right hand grabbed at the spear in his chest, preventing Luoji's spear from piercing any further. Bang! A palm suddenly shot toward Luoji. Bang! As everyone watched, the 2 palms clashed, and Jiasiluo borrowed the rebound force from Luoji's palm to free himself from the spear, leaving a trail of bloody light in his wake as he plummeted downward. Get out of my way! Jiasiluo roared and spread out his arms, sending a torrent of stellar energy out in all directions, bringing with it a great spray of blood. Aya! Screams filled the air as a large number of Tang soldiers were sent flying by Jiao Sero. Jiao Sero borrowed the stimulation of pain to increase his speed, carving out a bloody path through the crowd as he rushed down the mountain. Don't let him get away. Behind him, there was a thump as Luoji dropped to the ground, spear in hand, a hint of surprise in his eyes. His Donjong acupoint had been pierced, and destructive stellar energy had jolted his limbs and bones. But he was still able to escape. This foreign bandit's defense was far more formidable than he had imagined. Bang! Without a word, Luoji's eyes flashed with cold light as he chased after Jiao Sero, his spear in hand. His opponent had already been pierced by his spear, but he was still able to escape. If he really did manage to escape, it would truly be a joke. Hand over your life. Luoji let out a roar, and half of the mountain range trembled under his furious roar. Jiao Sero was on his must-kill list. In this battle, he had killed countless Annam Protectorate soldiers, and Luoji had always wanted to fight him. Alas, Jiao Sero was extremely vigilant and seemed to be consciously avoiding him. Moreover, he had many soldiers at his side most of the time, and he was practically inseparable from the crown prince of Mengshi Zhao Fenjie. Although Luoji was extremely confident in his spear, he was not confident that he could deal with both Jiao Sero and Fenjie at the same time, much less the many Mengshi Zhao and Yusang experts at their sides. Bang! 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 Luoji's movement technique was pushed to the limit, and he was able to leave behind a few afterimages. After him, Su Shiping, Su Anduan, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chunqiong Li Ji Fong Tang, and Zhou Han were stunned for a moment before hurriedly giving chase. This battle had gone far more smoothly than they had expected. Although Death's Scythe had been given to them by Wang Chong, there had been too little time for them to test out its power. It was actually able to blow apart Jiao Sero's stellar energy clone. Simply inconceivable. As this thought flashed through Su Anduan's mind, he increased his speed. The closer he got, the more he could sense Jiao Sero's power. This sort of ferocity and brutality was like that of a primordial beast, not something an ordinary person could deal with. Moreover, his stellar energy was extremely robust, far surpassing that of the vast majority of generals. But who would have thought that the attack would actually blow him up in an instant? Young Master's calculations are truly inconceivable. A brute like Jiao Sero was completely toyed with by Young Master. Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chunqiong Li Ji, and the others were all invigorated. Zhao Wujiang's feigned defeat had been fooled by almost everyone. Only they knew that this had been a trap from the very start, baiting Jiao Sero into a trap. It was precisely for this reason that they were all filled with admiration for Wang Chong. Chapter 574. Those who stand in my way shall die. Putting aside Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chun Xiong Li Ji, and the others in the back, Jia Silua was roaring at the front, dragging a bloody path behind him as he charged with all his strength. Impossible! Impossible! My Zifidon Halo is the ultimate technique of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Master said that with my ability, as long as I don't meet Wang Yan or Xin Yu Zhongtong, no one can easily threaten me. How could I be defeated so easily? How could there be such a person in the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains? The panic in Jiao Sero's heart was indescribable. Their combined attack had completely shattered his confidence. Right now, the stellar energy in Jiao Sero's body was less than a third of what it used to be, and it was still being depleted at an alarming rate. This was the result of his beast body being destroyed, and his stellar energy being destroyed. Combined attack? What kind of combined attack is that? In this battle, only Jiao Sero knew that the one who dealt the fatal blow and destroyed his stellar energy was not Luoji's spear, nor was it Zhao Wujiang's. It was the combined attack of those few people. When Luoji's spear pierced through him, his stellar energy had already been destroyed. The Tang dynasty definitely doesn't have that kind of formation. It must be that brat. It must be that brat. Jiao Sero was shocked and afraid. His entire body was trembling. Almost subconsciously, a figure appeared in his mind. If there was one person who could design that formation, it would undoubtedly be that brat. Jiao Sero had never seen this combined attack formation in the past month in the Tang dynasty. If they had it, they would have used it long ago. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Jiao Sero's entire body was trembling. There was no anger in his heart, only deep fear. He was sure that the reason why Zhao Wujiang had feigned defeat to lure him was definitely that young man's idea. In Jiao Sero's entire life, he had never been so afraid of a youth who was inferior to him. Although the young man's strength was obviously weaker than him, Jiao Sero couldn't bring himself to take revenge at all. He was only left with a deep fear. He wanted to leave this mountain far away from him. From his battle with Fenjie to being ambushed in the rain, to being ambushed by Zhao Wujiang and 10 others. Jiao Sero no longer had any desire to fight in front of this youth. Jiao Sero had experienced such a feeling before. That was when he was the prime minister. Boom! A peal of thunder came from the base of the mountain. The neighing of countless horses mixed with the clattering of armor. Jiao Sero could sense that the great general's side had begun to move. A new batch of Uzun cavalry and experts were charging up the mountain, but it was already too late. I have to hurry back to the main army. Only by returning to the Mengshi, Yusang army, will I be able to fight for a chance at survival. Jiao Sero's heart was thumping, the thick scent of death wafting from his nose. Never before had Jiao Sero felt so close to death. That sharp aura was like a blade on his back, following him like a shadow. No matter how he ran, he could not shake it off. Hand over your life. Suddenly, an earth-shattering roar rang out. After such a long time, Luoji had finally caught up from behind. Clang! A dragon's cry resounded through the air. As countless people watched, Luoji stomped his foot, his entire body shooting into the air like a cannonball. The spear in his hand danced to its limit. It was no longer a spear, but a dragon. A flood dragon that had soared into the sky from the depths of a lake. Roar! Luoji's eyes chilled as he leaped into the air. The spear in his hand let out a long cry, transforming into a flood dragon that shot toward Jiao Sero's back. Not good. Jiao Sero was stunned, his soul leaving his body. In the past, he might have been able to block Luoji's spear, but now, his strength was simply not enough. Hung. No one noticed that an Uzun scimitar had come flying out of nowhere and struck Luoji's spear. That spear, imbued with destructive energy, was sent flying. Protect the general. A war horse neighed. An Uzun general with a mustache narrowed his eyes, and suddenly became one with his horse. He brushed past Jiao Sero, and rushed toward Luoji in the air. Kubawa! Jiao Sero's eyelids twitched, and he was stunned. He knew this general, but this general was definitely not under his command. However, Kubatawa did not understand Jiao Sero. Clang! Before he arrived, he had already slashed his scimitar at Luoji. Presumptuous! Luoji's strength was so strong that even Jiao Sero had to be wary of him. Not to mention these Uzun generals. Bang! With just one palm strike, the horse's head was smashed. The tall and sturdy Highland steed, along with the Uzun general, were sent flying by Luoji. However, just as one Uzun general was sent flying, a series of neighs cries could be heard. In an instant, another 7 or 8 Uzun generals on Highland steeds rushed over. These Uzun generals had fierce looks in their eyes. They were brave and aggressive, and there were thorny halos under their feet. They were fighting with their lives on the line. Luoji had blocked 5 or 6 ferocious Uzun generals in a row, but facing so many fearless Uzun generals, even someone like Luoji, who had peerless spear skills, was momentarily held back and could not continue to chase after Jiao Sero. Bang bang bang. Luoji wasn't the only one who was held back. These Uzun generals who had appeared out of nowhere rushed over. Su Shiping, Su Anduan, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chen Xiong, Li Ji. All the people who were chasing after Jiao Sero were stopped. Damn it! He still managed to escape. On the summit, Chen Shusun was about to stomp his feet and shout. A person like Jiao Sero was an enormous threat on the battlefield. Countless Tang soldiers had already died at his hands. If he still managed to escape after Wang Chang's trap, then it would be even more difficult to kill him in the future. Moreover, even though Luoji's spear had pierced through his chest and severely injured him, he was still unable to move. However, this kind of injury was not enough to kill him. In addition, the Uzun army had quite a few pills from the Great Snow Mountain's secret storehouse. As long as Jiao Sero didn't die, he might return to full of vigor. At that time, given his caution and viciousness, countless people would die at his hands. But this was not the only thing that worried Chen Shusun. While Luoji, Su Shiping, and Su Anduan were being held back by a group of Uzun generals, they heard a scream. This scream did not come from Jiao Sero, but from Zhao Wujiang in the rear. Longkimba! Zhao Wujiang let out a loud cry. Suddenly, he flew high up from the crowd, and like a kite with its string cut, he was flung towards the mountaintop. Bang! The steel vibrated, and Zhao Wujiang's body violently smashed into a thick modular steel wall. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his complexion became much weaker. And across from Zhao Wujiang, a stalwart figure exuding a destructive aura had appeared. His hair was disheveled, and he exuded a wild aura. In his hand was a dazzling scarlet scimitar of Uzun. Longkimba! This sudden sight left everyone dumbfounded, and even Luoji paled. In his panic, he was almost struck in the arm by an Uzun general. He recognized this stalwart figure. There was no high-ranking officer of the Annam Protectorate, and the Uzun army, that did not recognize each other. Longkimba, the leader of the 5 Tiger generals, the strongest general under Huashu Wuzong's command. This person was even more terrifying than Jiao Sero, and his martial arts far surpassed Jiao Sero's. But this was far from what Luoji was concerned about. Why is he here? Luoji's heart chilled as he suddenly sensed an intense danger. Longkimba was the leader of the 5 Tiger generals, but he had not sensed him at all. Moreover, only a brief moment had passed since Jiao Sero had been ambushed and pursued. Even if the Uzun army wanted to save him, it would have been too late. Unless Daluan Ruozan, in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the same thought flashed through the minds of Luoji and Chen Shusun, 2 people in different parts of the formation. There was only one possibility for Longkimba to appear in such a short time. Before Jiao Sero had been ambushed, he had already stealthily entered the mountain, and only 2 people could have made this sort of arrangement. If it wasn't Daluan Ruozan, it was Huashu Wuzong. Luoji is in danger. There was no time to think. On the mountain, the upper echelon of the Annam Protectorate roared and neighed as they rode toward Zhao Wujiang. But it was all too late. Jiao Sero was no fool, so in order to lure Jiao Sero out, Zhao Wujiang had truly taken a blow from him. Longkimba had clearly seen this point in his plan to ambush Zhao Wujiang. Now Jiao Sero was not dead, but Zhao Wujiang was about to die. Bang! Longkimba bent his right foot and stomped on the ground. His entire body was like a top bough, suddenly released. He lunged straight at Zhao Wujiang. his fierce energy piercing through the air and locking onto Zhao Wujiang. Boom! The steel wall weighing several thousand jin was sent flying by Longkimba, but Zhao Wujiang barely managing to dodge the attack. Stop him! Hurry and save Lord Zhao. This sudden development took everyone by surprise. At almost the same time, Luoji Su Shiping Su Anduan, Zhang Long, Zhao Hu Chen Xiong Li Ji, and the others cast aside Jiao Sero and charged at Longkimba. Jiao Sero had already escaped this calamity, and the other experts of the Mengshi, Yusang army had already gathered around. Continuing to pursue him might not necessarily yield any results, but if Zhao Wujiang was left unattended, he might really end up dead. Longkimba was not an easy character to deal with. Ha ha, Prime Minister, Great General. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.